James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Well, welcome, listeners, to another episode of A More Civilized Podcast.
Wait,
you
is that
have
what we're doing?
no idea
Sorry.
how much work goes into these episodes. I put like 4 hours of research into the episode we're about to record.
Man, we have been sitting at
messaged
this table
people
prepping for like an hour. It's
I sent messages to people with more knowledge in this area than I had to get their opinion so that I'd be prepared. You want to know what the hardest thing about this episode was? Getting started. Yep. This is, I think, our 5th attempt at starting to record this episode.
5th attempt, and we've been here for 2 hours.
Now, to be fair, we have done some recording here, so it's not like we've been completely off topic. But
I blame Chris.
That's fair.
So,
I'll take that. I'm okay with that.
Well, and also just lots have happened since the last time
I think
we were
Chris
together.
was personally responsible for at least 3 of the 5
Absolutely.
attempted starts.
Yeah, I derailed a lot.
derailing.
I like to talk.
I'm sure I did the other
In
two.
In case none of you have figured that out from previous episodes that I led.
I just want, the reason I bring that up, so that I have an excuse to harp on these two gentlemen, because I don't get it to enough, but also, so you appreciate how much dang work it is.
So hard to sit here and talk with our friends. Just on and on.
Well, especially because I've been ready to start recording for like an hour and just
that's
haven't.
fair.
Anyway, love both of these gentlemen. I'm Kyler.
I am Chris.
I'm Ross.
Oh. And I am apparently very burpy from these sodas I'm drinking, so I can power through tonight's episode.
It's late. We're recording later than
is.
usual.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Has everyone turned their alarms off?
Yes.
I did on mine as well.
I've got to turn my phone on
Mine
silent.
would be
Hold on.
about to go off, but
Okay.
I no longer have that alarm in the evening. So
Hey!
yeah. Apparently, I only needed to interrupt 3 episodes with that.
Now we're just waiting for Alexa to do her thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it didn't
Okay,
turn on.
good.
Wow, that's surprising. 'Cause I can talk to her from the room over there, and she'll still get me sometimes. Oh, by the way,
man.
just while we're talking about it. Hey, Alexa, tell me a Star Wars joke.
What's Yoda's favorite dinosaur?
I don't know.
The Deuceratops. There's no try.
That is so amazing!
Man.
Alexa is going to give you such an edge in
I
in
know,
our
in
dad
that
joke.
Oh
I
my
know.
goodness,
I know.
that's fantastic.
I feel like we have to like partition stuff out. Like you take Alexa, you take Siri, and I'll take Google or something.
I'm
go.
gonna
There
be
we go.
so bad at that. I'm so
I love that
excited.
joke. That was delightful.
Yeah, that was good.
I did not expect it to be something I didn't recognize.
Yeah, no kidding. I thought they were going to go with the lukewarm tauntaun. I saw that on Facebook today.
I've only done a couple jokes from her, but so
No,
far she
you
has
should
not
leave
repeated.
yourself fresh. You should leave yourself fresh. Okay, we'll talk about that after we're recording. I've got some
this
ideas.
episode.
Okay, Ross, take the news away so we can
Yes.
get this episode started.
So we have 2 bits of awesome little news, nuggety newsness. First is that the Resistance TV series that we've talked about several times recently is getting renewed for a 2nd season, which of course should not surprise you. But the exciting part is that it's being renewed for Disney Channel and not exclusively Disney Plus.
Which I believe is what I predicted
Yeah.
when we talked about
Well, I
it
know
like the
it's
first time.
what
It's
everybody
what
believed,
pretty much
yeah.
everybody thought. So,
So good on Disney.
yeah.
Making it...
Way to
you
not
know,
lock it up right away.
Yeah, it's making it hard for me to hate you. You know?
I've actually been surprised by the amount of things I've heard that there people are like, oh yeah, that's going to be a Disney Plus thing, and then it turns out no, it's not.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of those that I've run into. I can't remember any of them right now, but
I think
none of them are Star Wars, so it doesn't matter. So.
We're all just assuming that they're going to follow the same sort of models that other companies have in the past, but they're not, which is nice.
Shocking.
But kind of worrisome.
Suspicious. It's like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Disney
Disney?
keeping us on our toes.
This is the calm before the storm. Anyway,
Oh, man.
our second bit of news, which was I found all the more exciting, but also gives me with a little trepidation, because we're getting to the point now where I'm really starting to avoid spoilers, because we're probably going to start getting the serious spoilers for the next movie to come out.
For episode 9.
Those are probably going to start churning here soon. So Kyler found an article that apparently, when I was skimming through it, it said that J.J. Abrams had sent out a Christmas gift to the production crew of the episode 9 that they're currently filming, and that some of the things in the gift that he sent out were actually spoilerish for the upcoming episode. There have been 2 employees that have come forward and talked about
Their gift.
One of them hated Last Jedi. The other, did they say love it?
Loved
Or okay,
Yeah.
the other loved Last Jedi. Both of them have said that this upcoming movie is amazing.
Yep.
That
and
they
that
are
they
both
love it.
Yeah.
That it's really good, really solid.
The article went on to say, and here's why, and that's when we stopped reading.
Yeah. We're trying to walk the tightrope of providing you listeners with information without spoiling it for ourselves.
They're trying to walk that. I don't even.
That's true.
I don't even get close to that.
Yeah. And the...
It's because we're the only ones that take this podcast seriously.
Yeah, that's probably true. I take everything seriously, but when my taking things seriously doesn't look like seriously to most people.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is true.
Unless I'm just, resting and then I have real resting bee face, but...
The one other thing that I did glean from my skimming of the article to avoid spoilers was that they were both commenting how that the scale and scope of this movie is far beyond anything that we'll have seen before. And so, get excited. I mean, this is
going to be a massive telescope.
This is going to be... Chris. Yeah,
That's so dumb.
You get the sigh of dismay, even from Kyler.
That's okay. I'm okay with it. It was a dumb joke. It deserves it.
When Kyler tells a dumb joke, we have to laugh, apparently.
Yeah, you should, because my jokes are awesome.
We only laugh when Alexa tells jokes.
It's true.
That was a surprisingly
pretty
good one,
good.
though. That caught me off guard how good that was. Oh, my heavens.
Maybe she can send us out on that episode. Anyway.
There's at least one listener who's sitting there like, how had you not heard that joke? Like, that's been around since the 80s.
Hey, oldie but a goodie, man.
Sure, maybe.
My Tauntaun joke's also old, and it's hilarious.
It's true.
I do love that joke.
Oh, man. Anything else, Ross?
I actually will often in my family, when something's lukewarm, I'll just say, it's just like, oh man, this is just like Tauntaun here. And that's all I'll say. That's just my go-to.
Is that legit? Or
Oh yeah, no, I've
really?
literally done that. My sons know what that means.
Okay.
They know that means that it's not very warm. In fact, if I said lukewarm or tepid, they probably wouldn't know what that means, but they know what Tauntaun means.
I love that in the Baxter household, Tauntaun is a unit of temperature measurement.
Absolutely.
That's why Chris is on this podcast.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
And that is it for the news.
Okay.
Onward.
Well, and I was going to say with that last one that it's just like, I don't find it like massively unexpected, because that is kind of like when you're finishing up a trilogy, that tends to be like Empire Strikes Back was somewhat divisive for a lot of people. Return of the Jedi kind of wrapped it up, and a lot of people who had problems with Empire Strikes Back went, oh, well, I guess that resolved actually, because I mean you hear a lot of people when they talk about problems that they have with I've read problems that people had with Empire Strikes Back, and it was them sitting there going, well, clearly they're doing this now and they shouldn't do that, and then they got Return of the Jedi and went, oh, they weren't doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or more like, more realistically for most people, it's like, oh, good, they didn't do that. They weren't idiots. And it's like, no, you were the one kind of being them there. But
I mean, it's JJ's got a
and I do not want to dismiss the effort that has to go into that and how
Daunting
difficult this
that
is.
yeah.
But I look to after Two Towers came out, I remember someone was interviewing Peter Jackson and was just like, well, after all of this, are you worried about the last one? And he's just like, no, why would I be worried about that? That one has an ending. Like, this was the hard one. This one had no beginning and no ending. It's the middle piece. That's always the hardest. When the next one has an ending, I'm not worried about that. And that's kind of what's going on.
Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, we're ready to get into this episode. Since you've all presumably seen the title to this episode. It's about Fantasy Flight Games.
Someone
FFG.
might be just letting it play through.
This is about FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, which is where the title of our episode comes from. 5 fantastic games. We could get the FFG, but there were 6, so it's FFG plus 1. Mostly because I didn't want to give up the pun, because I love puns. So, just a little bit of background information here. If I could hold my phone, not like a fish. Fantasy Flight Games, founded in 1997 by Christian T. Peterson with the launch of the game Twilight Imperium, which we've probably all seen on a game store shelf.
That's the one about the sparkly vampires forming an empire and taking over the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's such a ripoff, there of Twilight Imperium.
Somewhere Christian Peterson's just like, how dare you! Ah! I just woke up pissed and I don't know why.
Yeah. By the way, Christian T. Peterson, if you ever are listening to this and want to come on the show, you're more than welcome.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, but in August 2011, Fantasy Flight Games acquired... This is the important part of their history for our podcast.
Yes.
August 2011, FFG acquires the license for card, miniature, and role-playing games set in the Star Wars universe. And shortly thereafter, we get some of their games. I decided not to order the games in chronological release order. I decided to order them mostly, with one exception, in order of my preference and opinion on their quality from least to greatest. With one exception, and I just paired it with another one because it fits so well. So, the game of least quality, at least in my limited opinion, because this is actually one of the 2 games on this list that I have not actually played myself. Ross has.
Well, not a full game. I got it set up once. And
You've
watched,
played more than I have.
Yeah, I got it set up once and watched the YouTube how to play thing. My wife and I meant to play it this week, but
I watched
it's been busy.
someone play this game for approximately 7 minutes once.
I have never played any of these games.
So,
I have watched Legion and Armada for short periods of time. Most of my experience watching Armada was set up.
the first game
And
was
I have
on the
played-
list. We'll get to those in a
yeah.
minute. The first game is Destiny. It's the trading card. Oh, so here's just some information on Destiny.
We're not speaking about the video game here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Destiny.
The Star Wars
Star
card game.
Wars Destiny trading card
Also
game.
had recently weird news.
Oh yeah. What?
Okay, pausing so we can anyway. Activision and Bungie.
Oh yeah.
have
Oh,
split.
that's
Yeah.
Destiny. Yes,
Yes.
you're right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we knew that. You can leave that in. We'll probably care. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Destiny was released November 2016. The genre is a trading card game. So think kind of like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or something like that, right? Players 2 or more. I'm not really sure how you would handle more than 2 people, but it said
Does
2
it
or more.
say two or more?
On the Wikipedia, it said 2 or more. Like I said, I've not played this, so I'm not really sure how you would approach a more than 2 player game,
Yeah.
but whatever. Setup time, less than 5
Well, I mean,
minutes.
I've played Magic the Gathering with more than 2 players.
So it probably works like
Yeah,
that. See, and I've never played any
I've only
trading
ever
card.
played Magic the Gathering with more than 2 players, actually. So
Really? Yeah. See, and the only trading card game I've ever played is Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only a 2-player. So I didn't know that you could like team up or whatever.
yeah. It's basically, if I remember right, it was just you just choose who you are attacking. You're not attacking everyone. So people can attack back and forth at each other.
Yeah. So the playing time on Wikipedia said less than 60 minutes. I'm sure it's probably a lot less than that, but I don't know. I've never played a trading card game, so I don't know if like less than or around an hour is like an accurate.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yes,
assume they
I
know what
don't
they're
know.
talking about.
And
so.
again, you're coming from
Yeah,
Hearthstone.
well, you would assume they know what they're talking about, but when we get to like Armada and Legion, their times, they grossly underestimate the amount of time it takes to play.
Kind of like Risk.
But
Yeah.
also, you're coming from Hearthstone, which is built to be fast.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
So I don't know. The cost, the base game, the core set is $30. Then they have like starter sets that are like themed
Right.
for like the Empire or whatever. Those are $15, and then you have booster packs that are $3. So that's sort of the stats on the game. This was my little description of it. Basically, this functions similarly to Magic the Gathering, except this game also incorporates dice rolls to affect the outcome of cards played.
have you played Magic the Gathering, Kyler?
I was kind of taught it once in grad school,
Okay.
and it made kind of sense to me, but mostly I interrupted two other grad students playing. And I'm like, can I watch? And they're like, here, come play, we'll teach you. And I'm like, okay. And then they were like, maybe you just watch us play for a little bit.
Yeah. I've played it like 3 times total.
So,
And it was basically just like, here, we'll teach you to play it. And I started playing and went, oh, I've played games like this. Okay.
Yeah.
oh, and
I've
actually,
played a decent amount.
also while I was in grad school, but not with other grad students, there was a kid in my neighborhood, like we're friends with his parents and stuff, and he was a teenager, like in high school, and he's like, I saw him playing Magic. I'm like, dude, teach me how to play. This looks like kind of a fun game. So he tried to teach me how to play, and it was again one of those things of a combination of me being a poor student and he being a terrible teacher resulted in about a half an hour of wasted time for both of us.
Yeah.
So,
I found the Steam
so sorry,
versions-
Mitchell.
I found the Steam versions to be very educational with my Magic the
Oh,
Gathering.
bad, yeah.
There you go. Maybe that's what I need to do.
And I've played a fair bit because I had several students at the fencing club that were way into it. And our club was attached to a small mom and pop card shop.
Now, I just want to interject real quick to inform you that when Russ says at the fencing club, he means at the fencing club where he instructed in fencing.
Yes.
It's pretty cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ross and I, we went to college together. I needed a PE credit for my general ed. So
did
did
I.
Ross. And I was like, dude, let's take fencing together. We've always wanted to learn how to do this. We did.
Well, you went to one class.
No.
Or was it 2
I went
classes?
to all the fencing classes.
No, you didn't. You dropped out after 1 or 2 classes. I think that first week because you had some other scheduling
Oh, that's
conflict.
right. A different class came up.
Yeah.
Something
They offered-
actually pertinent to your major.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That's right. And then Ross went on to. Oh no! It wasn't a PE credit. I knew it was an elective, and that just happened to be it. And then I found something else that I'd rather take.
So I finished off the semester, hung out for the evening classes for a couple more semesters, started training under the coach to become a coach, and then eventually that coach had to leave, and so I was going around with any experience, so it was mine.
Yep. It was
anyway,
really cool.
the shop next door was a little
So if
Ross
Ross
101
challenges you to a duel, listener, don't accept. He's trying to bait you.
Unless, of course, you have even more experience.
Yes. Or a pistol.
So
Please don't shoot Ross.
yeah, please don't. Anyway, the shop next door.
That derail was
I'm not
awesome.
gonna lie, I love doing that.
I get, and you're so good at getting me right to the same point every time in my explanation.
Oh, listeners, this is a game that Chris and I often play with each other and with Ross. We just try to derail.
I'm not even gonna pretend I'm doing that on purpose. I just
knew what Chris-
digress.
I knew what Chris was doing. That was so good. I'm like, I'm not even going to stop him. He's on a roll.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
So the shop next door.
To what, Ross?
Yeah, as I'm looking at them to interrupt, to the fencing club was a little mom and pop card shop.
Right.
It was called Mr. E's. Mr. E himself loved me for
Was he-
whatever reason. I have
Is he
no
shady?
idea. No,
Mysterious?
no.
Mr. Ease?
There's the dad joke. I can't believe after 5 years sitting next to that shop, I never thought of that.
Really?
Oh, Ross, how did you
Man,
not?
I cannot hear Mr. E without thinking of
Yeah,
Batman
Mr. E.
Forever.
Yeah.
Well, Batman
Oh,
Forever.
yeah.
Mr. E. Edward Nigma.
Anyway, I loved Mr. E because the first time I talked to him, he immediately pegged me as a geek. I don't know how he did it. So, because I had just taken over, and he comes in and is like, yeah, I'm from next door, we occasionally will come and do the card shows here, and I already knew all that. He's like, and you should come over, and we've got, cards, baseball cards, football cards, Magic the Gathering cards, Pokemon cards. I started listing off all the geek ones after me not responding to the first 2 sports ones, probably. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. And then for some reason, he just started bringing over Magic the Gathering booster packs.
Huh.
And so, like honestly, he'd come over, he'd have like 3 to 5 every time he came over for me. And so I've got this massive box
Wow, Ross.
of Magic cards that
What
I've
a nice
never
guy,
purchased.
Mr. E.
How
Awesome.
did
I
not
loved
know
Mystery.
this?
Yeah, it was
Ross,
over there, but we've moved
You
it. Anyway,
didn't tell me this. Wow.
sorry.
That's
But
fair. I didn't tell you I was having a child.
yeah, on 2 occasions.
That's
No, you did tell me the first time. That's right, you did. That's right, I
yeah.
remember now.
And I told you the second or the third time. It was only the second one I
Second time.
forgot.
No, it was second
You've
and
only
third.
done it twice.
No,
You
he's
had-
done it 3 times.
Oh, that's
Christina's
right.
pregnant.
That's
Christina's
right.
currently
I forgot
pregnant.
about that.
Yeah, currently pregnant.
I forgot about that.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway,
Congratulate Kyler online, everybody.
Hey, or not. That's fine.
so I've played a bit of Magic. I've tried, honestly, that whole story was just to validate my playing of Magic and comparing it to Destiny. Oh my gosh, guys.
Back to the actual
Back to the
topic.
actual
20
topic.
minutes later.
So the way Magic the Gathering works is you have characters, monsters that you use to attack and defend hit
Spells
points.
and abilities and various things, yeah. Each card represents some method of defending or attacking.
Right. So you have these characters that you're using to attack and defend, and you also have to use what are called lands. That is your resource that you spend to get new monsters on the field.
Yeah.
To
To get
do more
mana,
attacking and
basically, to
defending.
spend, yeah.
Whenever you use those lands, like you can't use them for the rest of the turn. You only have so many you can use
Exhaust
in
the
a
card.
turn. Yeah.
To put it in our modern terms.
And it's actually that's Magic terms too.
Oh,
but I
yay.
was making it easier for
Sure,
our
sure,
listeners
sure.
to digest. So Destiny is similar in that you have a character, a person or a monster from the Star Wars universe. But the summoning it's not the summoning of the monster. I believe it's their attacks that your dice rolls are powering, if I remember correctly. Does that sound
Yeah,
right
so like
to you?
each character has a die associated with that, or dice.
I think there's like a couple, yeah.
Yeah, so like the weaker the monster might only have like 1 die,
Mm-hmm.
and then like heroes like Rey might have 3 or something like that. And yeah, the dice have something to do with their attack, with the character's attack.
There was an attack and then there was defense, and I think there was some sort of support, if
Yeah.
I remember right.
I've not played it. I
So-
don't know.
You roll the dice. Whatever you get more of those resources, and that determines what you get to do per
That
turn.
sounds right.
If you
I'm
roll,
getting flashbacks to the
yeah,
game that I watched for 5 to 7 minutes, and they
Right.
were talking. You're using terms that I'm like, oh, they said those words. I don't know what they mean.
So if you roll a dice and all of the faces are attack points, then you can spend those points to attack. If you roll one that has one attack and one heal point, I don't remember what they even are anymore, but you can then save those points to use later, and so on and so on until eventually someone loses. So knowing Magic as well as I do, I'm actually looking forward to really diving into this. I just need to find the time to really do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, well, and I've been meaning to play with Carrie too, but it's just never happened.
We should try.
But,
We should try to do it. Maybe
yeah.
next week sometime.
So, as much as Kyler, I don't think you sold it as well. I feel like this is going to be a much better game.
No,
'Cause remember,
I do, and okay, let me partially retract something. When I said I'm putting these in order of, like, my opinion of, like, least cool game to most cool, I'm not saying that, like, that Destiny's a bad game. Like,
No.
Fantasy Flight makes
I was
really
gonna say,
solid
yeah.
games.
They've got a history of turning
But-
out really good stuff.
Also, since this show is totally arbitrary and I was the one putting together this episode outline, it's totally subject to my opinion, and I like strategy games more than anything else. So those ones are at the top.
and my last thought on it is just that if you model something after a supremely successful franchise and/or mechanic system, it's probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Your biggest difficulty in those cases is usually trying to steal people away from the game they're already
Right.
playing, which is why so many MMOs
Right.
have trouble competing with World of Warcraft. And if you're going to do that, you want a really bankable franchise behind it, which is why this was a good bet.
Yep.
yeah,
So I have a story.
which oddly has not worked in the mobile MMO space.
No, that's true.
Strangely,
Star Wars
but-
has not. Well, they got a nice market share. In
They
a
did
lot
better
of
than
cases.
anyone else. Yeah.
But yeah, until at least with Old Republic managed to kick along further than most MMOs
Yeah.
do. But
fact
yeah,
that it's
that
still
first
going.
Yeah, that exactly. Galaxies didn't do great.
Yeah.
So I have a story about Destiny
Okay.
and about X-Wing and about Armada, and it's all the same story. And Ross, you were there, but I'm trying to decide when we should tell this story or how.
Probably after all three of those, then, just so everyone knows what they are.
Okay.
Sure. I have no idea what you're talking about,
Yes,
so I'm
you
interested.
do, Ross. You do too. Okay. The next game in this list of 5 fantastic games plus one is Star Wars Rebellion. By the way, these are all going to have Star Wars in front of them, so I'm just going to not say Star Wars a million times.
You can just point at me and I'll say Star Wars.
Okay.
and you
Oh,
can-
I like it. That's even better. All right, we're going to try it out. So the next game is
Star Wars.
Rebellion. Ooh, that was good. High five. Yeah. Oh,
That was weak. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Well, we nailed the name and then we sucked on the high five.
Yeah, that
Adequate.
happens. We cannot be
Adequacy
good at all
achieved.
things.
Yeah, no kidding. The balance has been restored to the Force. So this game was released in 2016. It had an expansion called Rise of the Empire, which was released in 2017. Genre is strategy. This is kind of anyway.
Yeah.
Players 2 to 4. Setup time 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 30 if it's your first time like me and you don't really know what you're doing or what pieces will be most frequently used, so you're not really sure how to set stuff up. But plan on like 20, 30 minutes, maybe 15 to 20 if you know what you're doing. Playing time 3 to 4 hours. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. The cost, the core set, the base game is $100. The expansion is $40. So not a cheap game. Basically, so I got this game for Christmas. And it's awesome. I played this game once when I was in grad school with a guy in my neighborhood who, like, I collect video games in Steam. He collects real physical games.
You know a few people like
he
that.
had he was quite well off, and he had a rather large house. In the upstairs of his house was a not small game room, one entire wall, floor to ceiling, in probably a 10-foot, maybe 11-foot ceiling. Well, it was arched in the middle because it was it was on the top floor. Anyway,
Large room.
very large room, very large wall. I kid you not, floor to ceiling, covered in board games and like war game, like miniature games, like every kind. Like he could open up his own friendly local game store
That is-
with what he
that
has
is
in his
impressive.
house. And he was like, "Hey, you like Star Wars, right?" "Yeah, I sure do. I love it." He's like, "Well, I've got Star Wars Rebellion. Have you heard of it?" I'm like, "I have heard of it. Never played it. Want to. Way expensive. Don't know anybody with it." And he's like, "Well, actually, you do know somebody with this game. Why don't you come over to my house? We'll get pizza and drinks and we'll play this game." And I was like, "Sounds
He's sitting there
fun."
going, I just want someone to play this with. Come on,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no. And I was down with it. And after that, I was like, "Have you ever heard of Armada?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, I'm about to lighten your wallet significantly." Anyway, so I went and played Rebellion with him, and it plays a lot like Axis and Allies. where, like Axis and Allies, you've got the map of the world, you're building units, placing them on the board, moving them around, rolling dice,
Fighting
attacking.
your own version of World War II.
Yeah, fighting your own version of World War II. This is very similar, and they nailed this game thematically. So each different faction, the Empire and the Rebels, plays and feels very different from the other, which is really great, because Axis and Allies, it's basically the same no matter who you play in terms of the units that you're getting, because they're all exactly the same.
Yep.
Not so with Rebellion. They have the way that the Rebellion plays is very different than the way the Empire plays, and their units are very different.
I always love to see that.
Which is really great. So it's a little asymmetrical. The Empire is trying to locate and destroy the Rebel base. That's their primary objective. And they do so through overwhelming force, right? It's very easy for the Empire to capture planets, which then can start producing stormtroopers and TIE fighters and all this stuff. And you're sending out probes at the end of each turn to reveal whether or not the Rebel base is on this particular planet or not. And you're trying to get them. The Rebels, however, are going on these missions trying to gain reputation throughout the galaxy to eventually tip the galaxy into full civil war. Right. So if the Rebels can do that, reach a certain point of reputation before you discover and destroy the Rebel base as the Empire, then the Rebels win. And of course, if you destroy the Rebel base, then you win as the Empire. It is awesome. It is super, super fun. It does take a long time, so budget accordingly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like Axis and Allies.
Just like Axis and Allies. It is seriously... I played this just a couple weeks ago with Steven. Hey, Steven. It was like a couple
Steven's
days...
probably not even listening to this.
It was a couple days after Christmas, and I'm like, dang it, Steven, come play this with me. I just got this for Christmas. I want to play. He's like, okay, sounds good. And yeah, it was like it was like 4.5 hours or something like that. And he'd played once before, I'd played once before, so there was a lot of like, I think it goes like this.
Yeah.
Okay, here, you hand me that rule book, I'll look through this rule book, and we'll see if we can find an answer somewhere. So there was a lot of that going on, but really, after a couple of turns, like it is pretty intuitive, everything that happens. But it's really cool because each side has different operatives and stuff that are all from the Star Wars universe. So you've got Jyn Erso, you've got Mon Mothma, Leia, Akbar, Madine, Luke Skywalker, both Jedi Master version Luke Skywalker in the black from Return of the Jedi, and Bespin, like Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. Yoda, for the Empire you have the Emperor, obviously you have Krennic, you have Krennic's Fist, which were Death Troopers, and they were awesome. Which I had not played with before because the other guy didn't have the expansion because it wasn't out yet. But you've got Vader, Boba Fett, Jabba the Hutt, all these kind of things, and they all have different ability scores, for lack of a better word. There are 3 sort of abilities. There's just like a show of force, then there's like an intelligence one, and then there's like a production one, like an R&D is one of them, and then there's another one. There's 4 different ones. So each hero, it's like Vader's Fist, the Death Troopers, they're just straight like brute force. Right. Palpatine is like the intelligence and the other one that I can't remember. Then you have people like Tarkin, who's like 1 intelligence, 1 and the one I can't remember, and 1 R&D. So they all have different abilities. So then and then each side, the Rebels and the Empire, are both playing different missions that require different skill sets. Some are intelligence, some are R&D, some are whatever. So then you're assigning your different operatives to do these different missions to advance the cause of your side. Whether it's building a Death Star or, liberating a planet from the Empire or something like that. Yeah. But then also what is fun, and this is where a lot of the strategy comes in, is some of the abilities are things like capture an enemy operative. So you have to decide, okay, don't assign this guy to a mission, because if Ross is playing the Rebels and he assigns Luke over here, I need somebody to counter Luke and try to capture Luke and put him in Carbonite, is one of the Empire's abilities. That you can freeze an enemy hero in Carbonite, and then they basically become one of your units that you can move around the map and sort of play keep away from the other guys. You can turn an operative to the dark side with the Emperor, and then you get to actually just play that operative as if he's one of yours. And they don't get to get him back. It's awesome. Anyway, it's a really, really fun game. and I'm gonna force Ross and Chris to play this with me sometime.
Sure.
It's really a lot of fun. All the expansion does is it adds some new like mission cards, adds a couple of new heroes for each side. But most importantly, it adds a bunch of new units for each side. Each side gets like 4 or 6 new units, something like that, which is awesome. The game I played against Steven, it was so great. He was building up this huge rebel fleet on Mon Cala, and I had an Imperial fleet massing near Sullust, including my one and only Death Star. And I'm like, sweet. And he launches this desperate attack because he's like, I've got to hit the Death Star. I've got the right like attack cards in my hand now where I can actually wipe out the Death Star under certain circumstances. Like, this would be really great. So he attacks and he destroys the Death Star. And I'm like, oh, Fetch, are you kidding me? And then we both realized, wait a minute.
Death Stars do.
Yeah.
Get destroyed.
Then we realized, wait a minute. The turn before, I had built a shield generator on the planet, and its ability is if a space station, like the Death Star, is in orbit around a planet with a shield generator, it cannot be destroyed until the shield generator is gone. And I destroyed all of his ground units. So it was only a space battle happening. So he's like, actually, your Death Star's not dead. And I was like, great, I can't lose because the Death Star literally has infinite hit points. It can only be destroyed with like the right circumstances and cards.
Yeah.
So I'm like, he's like, okay, I'm going to retreat. And I'm like, block your retreat with this card. It was awesome. It was so
curious.
fun.
I saw on your list here it says it's 2 to 4 players. How do they handle more than 2 players if
Yeah.
you've only got the 2 sides to the
That's
conflict?
a great question. So what you do is anytime there is a battle, you alternate rounds in the battle between space and land. So one person is designated as the ground commander, the other person is the space commander.
Okay.
And then, so that way, like, you would be, Chris, totally in charge of whatever cards and units are going to be on the ground, and you would get to pick which cards to play on which round and whatever, and then I would be in charge of the space or whatever.
Right.
So you do it that way.
That's interesting.
I would recommend it most as a 2-player game, just it seems to
it sounds like
jive a little bit better, but anyway. Fantasy Flight does like to try to jerry-rig some rules in there for including more people.
I think that's
So,
wise. I mean, that's one
yeah.
of the appeals of Axis and Allies. It's just like,
Right,
hey,
is you can
we can
get-
get 5 people on here.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but yeah, Rebellion is really great. It's a lot of fun. It is pretty expensive though. I mean, and I got my core set used on Black Friday, so there were like double discounts.
Yeah.
And then because it was Black Friday, there was like another deal at the friendly local game store of like if you buy a core set of a game and you can get the expansion, an expansion to that game for a certain discount off. So I was like just under the total cost of the core set for both when it was all said and done, something like that. So I got a good deal. I would definitely recommend trying to get it at a discounted price if you can, because that's $140 is quite expensive, especially for a game I have played one time since buying.
Which is why he's going to
Which
play
is
it with
why
us.
I'm going to force you to play it. Exactly. But it is really fun. And again, I can't stress this enough. Even after that first time playing, 2 years ago or whatever, I was surprised at how well they were able to capture the thematic nature of the game, of the Star Wars universe. When you play the Rebels, it very much feels like the Rebellion would play. You cannot beat the Empire in a head-to-head combat. You can't. You have to focus on your little surgical missions if you want to win. You've
cool.
got to do it that way.
That's impressive to be able to mimic that.
And where the Empire is like, yeah, our missions are nice and all, but really, let's just get a whole bunch of planets and start pooping out all the kinds of units that there are and just hope we can crush something.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's by the time Steven ended up winning when we played the Rebellion 1, and I was almost out of units. Like, I had placed on the board all but like 4 of my units. So I'm like, and I still hadn't found the Rebel base. I'm like, what the fetch? Where is this? And so like, but it felt very much. I mean,
It was on Dantooine, wasn't it?
No, it was. Where was it? I think it was on Hoth. I can't remember.
I feel like I would be
Or no,
pretty
Tatooine.
inclined to jump to Hoth just out of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's a fun game and it's really thematic. So that's definitely a point in its favor. Okay, so here's the game.
That's actually, but just a quick digression because I like to do that. The only time I've ever played Axis and Allies was with just a couple of friends and some of their friends, so I only knew like half of the people involved. But I was playing Japan, and the guy that was playing Germany with me on the Axis there was he was a history major at our university, specializing in World War II history. And which is why we lost in the end, because he could not stop trying to act out World War II. It was actually very interesting to watch the mindset kind of going on there, where it's just
I
like
feel
he
his
kept,
pain.
yeah, it's like because he was just massing up for Normandy there, and the Allies were just like, okay, yeah, we're massing up here in Britain, and then they invaded Scandinavia and went around France, and he just like, wait, what? And I was like, to be fair, I didn't see that either. But yeah, we probably should have thought of that. But yeah, it was throughout the game. It's like that we could have bounced back from that, but he was just so dead set on World War II, and he couldn't actually play the game. And
I
it was
do
very
the same
interesting.
thing, like Rome Total War. I always play as Rome because I love Italy, and all the time, like when I'm getting ready to invade France, I'm like, well, this is the route Caesar took, and it worked well for him, so that's where we're going to go. Hey, look at that. That worked out pretty well. Oh, we're getting ready to invade Britain. Okay. What did Caesar do that failed? Okay, make sure I don't do those things. Okay, oh, we're getting ready to invade North Africa. All right, we'll follow Scipio. Here we go, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like that would be a temptation in this game. It's just like, well, let me jump to Hoth. Oh, nope.
Well, see, and yeah, in this game, I do that too, but I also feel that there is some rhyme to the reason, because I'm going, the chances of someone else who is playing this game that they would think the way I do is probably fairly high in terms of wanting to play this out. So I don't feel like it's all that weird to be like, let me go check Endor real quick. Let me go check Hoth real quick. Let me go check Dantooine. Let me go check Yavin. You know? Ended up destroying Yavin, and it cost me the game. I didn't realize that destroying a planet gave the rebellion a boost.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because you're being an evil empire, right?
And they're trying to curry favor, yeah.
And I knew I'm like, it's either this planet, either it's Yavin, or it's this other planet over here. There's not really enough time for me to get troops to this planet to check. It's Steven. He likes thematic stuff. I bet it's Yavin. Okay. Got a Death Star here. We're just gonna nuke this place from orbit. So I did nuke it. I'm like, is the rebel base there? He's like, no. And I'm like, crap! And he's like, but you know what you did? And he like moves his little counter one up. I'm like, dang it! Curse you! It was no good. Okay, so the next game is
Star Wars
Imperial Assault.
No, it's not.
You skipped
Did
the
I?
list.
Oh, I did. Okay, let's try that again. Sorry.
Star Wars
X-Wing 2.0. 1.0 and 2.0. It's basically all the same. So X-Wing 1.0 released in 2012. So remember, Fantasy Flight Games gets the rights to Star Wars in 2011.
Right.
2012, they release X-Wing 1.0. And it is wildly successful. It is a dogfighting game. So you are the single-seat craft of the Star Wars universe. Your X-Wings, your TIE Fighters, your Interceptors, your Slave Ones, your Millennium Falcons, right? This is the small ship-to-ship, little dogfights. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of fun. So you've got your basic ship. Each ship model comes with a handful of different pilots in that ship. So for like the Millennium Falcon, for example, Han Solo is a pilot, but also Lando is a pilot that you could fly. And then there's like a generic pilot, a freighter pilot or whatever, who's totally crappy, right? But he costs a lot less points. So they give you a bunch of different pilot options per expansion, per little booster pack. I forgot to give you all the stats for X-Wing. Start talking about the game. And then 2.0 was released September 13th, 2018, so just recently. The genre is miniature wargaming, players 2+, setup time 15 to 20 minutes at the very ceiling there. Play time 45 to 90 minutes, that's pretty accurate from what I've played. $40 for either of the core sets. Then with 2.0 coming out, since so many people already had
those core
those core sets and stuff, and they were angry and worried that maybe they were going to get ripped off, and it's like, well, you have a 1.0 X-Wing, but now you got to buy 3 2.0 X-Wings. Sorry. Yeah. So they released conversion kits that basically were just full of cards, the updated cards for 2.0. Because what part of the problem? Well, we'll get into that in a minute. Sorry. And then they have different expansions where you can buy like a single TIE Fighter or a single Millennium Falcon, or a single whatever. Right. Or sometimes they'll do like Rebel Aces, where it's like a B-Wing and an A-Wing, or they have bigger expansions as well, like they have a CR90 that goes for $90. They have the Imperial Raider, which is the most expensive one, that's $100.
The CR90 is the Brilliant Corvette, Blockade Runner, etc.
Yeah,
etc.
Leia's ship from Episode 4. So they can get kind of expensive, but most of them are around 15 to like 30-ish is the usual price there.
And the models are all great, by the way.
They are really great. They're all to scale with each other, which is really cool. It's all 1/270th scale, I believe. So they're pretty cool, which actually is kind of interesting because you look at like the Resistance Bomber from Episode 8. It is tiny. It's not much bigger than the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
But it looks way bigger in Episode 8.
Yeah.
But it's actually not. It's quite small. I got into X-Wing in early 2015, like around February or March of 2015. I had heard about this game, but I didn't want to get into it and spend all the money on the models if the game if it turned out to be a crappy game. And then my wife, who had recently become a fan of Geek and Sundry and was devouring everything they produced, showed me Will Wheaton's Tabletop, where he demos different games and whatever, and where he demoed X-Wing. So I watched it, and I'm like, that's a game that sounds pretty fun. Let me jump into this. So I bought the core set, I bought a couple of the expansions, got Slave 1, because it's Boba Fett.
Falcon.
And the Falcon, because it's the Falcon. It was great. Good times. Darth Vader, the Inquisitor's tie, there's good stuff. And again, it feels very thematic. The Rebel ships aren't quite as maneuverable as like a TIE fighter, but they're a little more hardy. They've got some shields. The TIE fighters are just dirt cheap, but then you can field a bunch of them. That's, so it feels very thematic. The problem with this, and this is why we have X-Wing 2.0, where we don't have a 2.0 of these other games, at least not yet.
Also because it's older.
It is older, but part of the problem was there wasn't as much foresight put into X-Wing as there was into some of the other games, like Armada, which we'll talk about in a minute. So they would release, a new wave of ships with some new upgrades and things to entice people to buy them. Because the upgrades, by the way, not all of them are ship specific. So not everything can, some of them are like, this will only work on X-Wings or something like that. But there's a lot of them that it's just generic. Hey, this really cool missile, it can be on anything, anything with a missile slot. And so you wanted to keep getting the newest stuff. Yeah. But what ended up happening is each wave broke 10 different rules from the wave before and made everything else obsolete. So unless you were buying 5 or 6 of every ship in the newest wave, you could not be competitive.
A lot of power creep.
A lot. Power creep is exactly the term. Just every wave just pushed it a mile.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, well, I'm still in grad school. I cannot afford to drop like $100 a wave when you're releasing like 4 to 5 waves a year. I just can't do it. So I actually stopped getting X-Wing after like wave, I think it was like 5 or something like that. Like I didn't even buy all the ships in each wave. It was just like I had like one Inquisitor's TIE Fighter from like wave 4. And then I got like the Houndstooth from wave 5, and that was the last ship I bought. Bought like an extra TIE Fighter just so I could field 3 of them. Yeah. But that was it, And the power creep just got worse after I stopped buying stuff. Because when I stopped buying stuff, it was when the TIE Punisher came out, and it came with so many ridiculous upgrades that I'm like, wow, unless I go and buy one of these, it won't be any fun for me to even play with anybody, because there's nothing I can do that will stand up to that. So why bother playing?
Which one's the TIE Punisher?
Ross is going to go get it. No, well, this is why 2.0 came out, is they realized that the power creep had gotten out of control, because they were like up to wave like 14 or 15. And remember, each wave basically completely invalidates every wave before it with the upgrades that come with it. It was just out of control. So Fantasy Flight said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to reboot the whole thing. You can keep your models because the cards now, the physical cards, are less important because we're moving everything over to an app that we can update and adjust as needed. So you'll buy the X-Wing cards that come with proton torpedoes, but the ability and cost of the proton torpedoes is subject to change based on what's on the app. So if we decide that these awesome proton torpedoes that we've only put at 1 point, and we're going, geez, that's way too cheap. Why did we put them at 1 point? Well, now we can adjust it in the app.
That's an interesting approach.
We can say, you know what, these are too good for only 1 point, let's bump it up to 3. And the app trumps everything. So when you're building your list, and the app is free, all you have to do is go download, and they've got everything all up to date. All the rules are up to date in the app, so that you can't, some things may, they may say this ship no longer can carry this type of upgrade, and so then they can just change it all there. So the actual physical cards in front of you are more just a visual reference of what's on there, but the actual rules are all in this app. Which I thought was an interesting and effective way of handling this, because this is going to really help curb the power creep for X-Wing. The other thing with X-Wing is it's kind of in a rough place, because it's the first of their miniature games.
Yeah.
They have 4 miniature games, Star Wars miniature games. X-Wing is the oldest, which means all of the mistakes and wrinkles get worked out in X-Wing first, and then they learn from it and say, okay, we know not to do this in this next game. So it's not entirely X-Wing's fault, though, and they have gotten better. I will say this for Fantasy Flight Games. They have gotten better at trying to think ahead of, okay, well, how will this card work for 4 waves down the road with whatever we have planned there? Oh, I can see how this is breaking, so then they work to address it. But anyway, so that's X-Wing. It is really fun. It's a lot of a shorter game as far as their miniature games go for Star Wars. It's probably the shortest. Because you can if you don't have very many ships, because you can kind of set whatever point limit you want. You can be like, okay, we're going to do a 100-point game. And that'll get you about 3 ships with some upgrades per side, Or you can do bigger or whatever. So you can kind of adjust how much time you have to be like, well, we only have a half an hour. Let's do a 50-point game. Let's, 1 ship with all the bells and whistles on it, go. Or, whatever, and make it bigger if you want. So you can knock out a game pretty easily. It certainly makes X-Wing tournaments easier, because the rounds can be much shorter than a round of, like, Armada. But it's a fun game. A lot of, compared to, like, Armada, which we'll talk about in a minute, people bring up the cost. I'm like, well, X-Wing's a lot cheaper. And I would say this. The initial buy-in to X-Wing is cheaper than Armada. But overall, you probably end up spending the same, if not more, in X-Wing than in Armada. Because every expansion pack is like $15 minimum, or $20 minimum, in 2.0. They up the price. It's $20 minimum for everything. And if you're just getting into the game and it's like, well, I want 3 X-Wings, well, great, now you have to go buy 2 X-Wings, where in Armada, it's like, well, you can get away with 1 home 1.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 2, great, but 1 is just as good, Yeah,
especially with the larger ships, you can generally only have enough points for 1 of them.
Yeah, so Armada's initial price is a little bit more, but you end up usually buying fewer models than in X-Wing. So it sort of sixes. Okay, the next game. This is the one that I skipped ahead to.
Yes. Star Wars.
Imperial Assault. This is released December 15th, 2014. Genre is a strategy board game. Players 2 to 5. Setup time I couldn't find, but probably like 20 minutes or so. 30, I don't know. I have not played this game. This is the other game I have not played. Playtime 1 to 2 hours. Costs are as follows. $100 for the core set. $45 to $65 per expansion, where they come with like a bunch of different like maps and stuff, and this will make more sense when we get into the description of the game. $13 to $25 for different expansion packs that are not the expansions, so booster packs kind of, and then $25 for skirmish maps. So basically this is a campaign game. It's an asymmetrical experience for 2 to 5 players. 1 player takes on the role of the Empire. This game kind of is like a hybrid between like a traditional war game like Warhammer or something like that and D&D. So you have 1 person who's sort of kind of like the DM, who is running the campaign, which is an actual narrative campaign that the other 4 up to 4 players are playing as the rebels, who are these different operatives trying to break into the bunker and steal the command codes, or whatever the mission happens to be, whatever the narrative is. And then it will literally kind of like a D&D campaign where it's like, okay, you achieved success in this mission. That means we go to scenario 2A. Oh, you failed, so now we're going to 2B. And then you go through and you tell this story. So that's kind of a fun narrative, and it changes from time to time. And just like D&D, you can, as the Empire player, like, change it up or whatever, fudge your own rules or whatever. So the Empire, one player takes the role of the Empire, and they're summoning troops, deploying disposable forces to take on the rebels. So they're sort of, summoning the monsters for the party to fight, kind of a thing. And, like, the rebels apparently will do different things. Like, if they go through this door before they activate this thing, then that means the Imperial player will, like, put 5 stormtroopers there behind the door because they were alerted or something like that, right? Any other rebel players, they control rebel characters, and they have so many expansions for this game. So you can be, like, literally name a person from Star Wars, you can be that person. They've got, like, the entire crew of the Ghost. They've got everybody from the original A-Team from the original trilogy. They've got literally everybody. And same thing for the villains. They've got the Grand Inquisitor, they've got Jabba the Hutt, they've got, various named stormtroopers that they've invented for this game to be, like, your crazy officers or whatever. Yeah, this style of play is similar to many role-playing games where one player takes on the role of a game master, who is the Empire. However, there is no self-created storytelling in Imperial Assault, so it's more of a tactical skirmish game with a sense of progression. Which I guess, like I said, you could probably, like any role-playing game, fudge things and change things as to what you want, but anyway. So I have not played this game, but I do know somebody who is very into this game. His name's Dick. He's awesome. He lives just in one town over from where I'm at. He kind of taught me how to play Armada. He's a great guy. Really, really nice guy. Love Dick. So I said, this is the message I sent to him. I said, hey, Dick, we're recording an episode of our podcast. Chris is dying over here because I said I love Dick. I do. Dick Nielsen, you're so great.
I am that immature. Yes, I was trying to hide it, but
there's one for the blackmail tape.
Nope.
No, he wouldn't be ashamed.
Yeah. So I said, hey, Dick, we're recording an episode of our podcast, and we're a Civilized podcast because I'm trying to get him to also listen. Tomorrow night, we're going to do an episode on FFG's games. Tell me about Imperial Assault. Give me a pitch on what is good and bad. What would you tell someone to get them into the game? And he said, I think, first of all, people have to realize that there are 2 different games in the box. One is a D&D style campaign, letting one player who's running the Imperials play against the Rebels. That campaign is set up and have some variation. Each expansion adds new sections into it. So that was the expansion portion of the cost that I was talking about, where it gives you different, like, mission packs, basically, in an expansion. And they have a bunch of them. There's like 12 or something like that. So, I mean, they've given you quite a bit. And the other is a head-to-head 2-player game. And this I did not know until Dick told me about it here. Because I'd asked Dick about Imperial Assault too, and he before told me mostly like the D&D side of it. Yeah. So I didn't realize until I'd asked him for this podcast. The other's a head-to-head 2-player game. That is what Fantasy Flight runs in the competitions. If you're playing against somebody else, you randomly pick a map, and then each of you plays an army that you have selected for that match. Hopefully you selected well for the map that is randomly drawn. The campaigns are either for 2 players up to 5. Well, actually, I just realized there's an online app which will run the Imperials for you, so technically you could play yourself against the computer, too. Which is kind of cool. But yeah, Dick is a big fan of this game. He loves it. He really, because I know he plays this a lot with his family, with his kids, so it's kind of like some family time where he'll DM, and then the kids will take their characters, and run through a scenario, and they enjoy that quite a bit. So that is that's Imperial Assault. Cool. Sounds kind of fun, but I am more into the next game. So I would have put Imperial Assault below X-Wing, but it pairs so well in comparison with Legion.
Fair enough.
That I wanted to put it here. So, Chris, our next game is
Star Wars
Legion. That's right. So, Legion.
Each of those announcements is getting a little bit more epic.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Oh, just wait till the next one.
I was impressed with that.
Legion. Yeah.
Oh, just wait. The next one's going to be
Finish him.
Finish him.
Yeah. So, Legion was released February 2018. So, almost a year ago.
Yeah.
They've had...
Is that all?
Yeah.
Man.
They've had something like 5 or 6 waves already. They're up to like 25 expansions for it. They've hit it pretty hard. So Legion, genre is miniature wargaming. Players 2 or 2 to 4. Setup time 20 to 30 minutes. I adjusted that time from what is listed on their website because it is not accurate. It really does take you about a half an hour to get everything set up, from setting up the terrain to setting out your units to making sure you've got your cards all ready. Like, I guess you could do some of that like before you show up to the match, but assuming that you both arrive at the game store and there's the table and you start unpacking your stuff, it's going to take you about a half an hour. And then the runtime is 2 to 3 hours. They say 1 to 2 hours on their website. That is a bald-faced lie, FFG. Unless you are running only the things in the core set, which is not a full army, by the way. You only have about 300 or 400 points in the core set. No, sorry, let's see. You have about 500 points per team in the core set out of the standard 800-point army. So unless you're running only core set material, I don't see how anyone can finish it in 2 hours.
And that's probably how they
or 1 to 2
do
hours
numbers, because that's the only thing they can actually predict everyone will have.
Which is why I updated it here on this podcast to reflect reality. Because it will take you 2 to 3 hours. I would probably give yourself some leeway, judge more on the 3, maybe 4, depending on the circumstances of your game, because they do like different operations where sometimes the point limit might be above 800, and then just plan on like 4 to 5 hours. The cost is $90 for the core set, which is actually a screaming deal for what comes in it, because it's, let's see, 25, 25, 20 or 25. So there's $75 per side. Yeah, per side. Not counting the 2 heroes that come in it, Vader and Luke. So you're getting $150 worth of stuff. If you were to buy the stuff in just separate expansions, it would cost you at least $150, because then you've got like a $15 like range ruler set. You'd have to get the dice set too, which is another like $15. So you're looking at quite a lot of stuff for your $90. Then the expansions are ranging from $13 for like a single hero like General Veers or Leia Organa or Han Solo or Chewie, up to the most expensive expansion, which is the ATST at $50. But most of the expansions run at $25. Those are like just your Stormtrooper units or your Rebel Troopers or your Scout Troopers or your Rebel Pathfinders or something like that. Most of those are about $25. Oh boy, I got into this game in just this last summer. After not being able to afford it in February and seeing other people play it, I was like, I must have this game, because this game is amazing. It is ground combat, so not space combat like X-Wing. Okay, this is your Stormtroopers and Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker running around on the battlefield, hacking at each other with lightsabers and shooting, missing each other, yes, with their blasters, because Stormtroopers have the worst attack dice in the game.
Seems kind of consistent with the movies.
Ross just brought his little Luke Skywalker mini that I gave to him for I think a birthday present. Yeah. So I must have got this game before June 24th of this year.
And you had been talking about it for quite a while.
So I got it probably in May then.
Or earlier, honestly.
Maybe April. Oh, geez, maybe I got this game sooner than I thought.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did a killer job on this, by the way,
really
at
did.
adapting it. It's pretty fantastic.
Because what he's talking about is the Luke that comes in the pack is
Bespin
Dagobah
Luke.
Luke.
Yeah, Dagobah
Yeah.
Bespin Luke, that beige flight suit.
Yeah.
Full of pockets and stuff.
And he trimmed it down and painted it for...
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
so it's kind of...
black
They
clothes,
come
Luke.
in soft plastic, so I took a little hobby knife, a little X-Acto knife, and shaved away the blaster on his leg, and shaved away the extra pockets on his chest and his pants, because his black suit has none.
Yeah.
And then I had to carve the belt in there that he uses and stuff. Anyway, and then I painted him all black so he looks like he's from Return of the Jedi.
Oh, you really did do a good job on this.
Yeah.
We might have to post pictures of this in the group.
Because looking at it, you couldn't tell where all those old pockets are that he's cut off. So, I mean, he
I did
really
pretty good.
was it.
Well, yeah,
I tried to carve...
I can see some of the carved lines here,
Yeah.
but I would not have guessed that that's what they were. If you
That
hadn't
was
told
also
me,
my
so.
first one. I have since acquired a second core set that I kept. I sold most of everything out of it, but I kept the Luke for me.
Right.
And I redid it, and it looks even better for myself. So, because mostly I really liked this one that I gave Ross so much that I was like, dang it, I kind of wish I hadn't given it away. So then when I got another one, I'm like, I'm going to redo this one and keep this one for myself.
And he gave it away strictly for the purpose of getting me into the game.
It's true. I was trying to lure him,
Yes.
trying to seduce him.
But he did that to me in Armada, and so the second time it didn't work as well.
Yeah, Ross is on to my tricks now.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I gave Ross an Armada ship, and then he was like, dang it, this looks so cool. I'm going to have to go get this game. And I was like, ha-ha, my plan worked. But Legion is super, super fun. They have learned quite a bit. It's Fantasy Flight's most recent Star Wars game. So they have the cumulative lessons learned from Imperial Assault, from X-Wing, from Armada.
And then from their other franchises.
And from their other
like
franchises,
Warhammer,
exactly.
Yeah, they got...
Fantasy Flight does Warhammer?
They
do
don't.
have some. They did have some. I was just looking.
Maybe a limited thing.
But, yeah.
They might have done a limited thing because it's Games Workshop that really does Warhammer.
Yeah, I was surprised to see it, but I might just also be. I might have missed.
Well, and if I understand right, the Warhammer company that actually owns that has been quite frugal. Not frugal.
Cheap.
They've been very prolific with their license.
There you
Yeah,
go.
they have
So-
been.
They've been loose, like a
Yeah.
street hussy.
Sure.
Spreading their wares
Their
wherever they
franchise,
can.
yes.
Yeah. They're enfranchising everyone. Go get yourself checked. Anyway, but Legion is awesome because it's extremely tactical.
I see.
Um,
They did have a Warhammer licensed game, but it is a living card game,
Oh,
not
yeah.
a miniature.
Not a
warfare
minute.
game.
I was going to say, I don't think...
I don't know what
Games
living
were-
card game means. That's just what it's listed as here.
Yeah. Anyway. But, like, things like taking cover. Like, you actually have to, like, move your stormtroopers, like, behind a building, and then they'll have cover, and you can't shoot them.
Yeah.
Or, like, they can hide in bushes, and, like, the amount of damage will be reduced because, like, you know, you can't
Harder
see
to
them.
see,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're harder to see.
hit.
So it's very tactical that way, which is a lot of fun. But unlike other miniatures games, like the way they handle the movement of your troops and stuff is a lot more flexible, so it doesn't... There's not as much, like, poring over the rules to be like, is this person really so many millimeters away from their unit leader? Oh,
Yeah.
like, they kind of simplified a lot of that to help the game flow better, and it is awesome. It's a super, super fun game to play. In fact, I'm going to be playing it tomorrow morning with John. Hi, John. I'll have already killed you probably by the time this airs. Just kidding. He wasted me the last game. It was not even close. Well played, my friend. Well played. I'm not bitter at all. I did expect to win, but it was a very fair win. He outplayed me, and it was a good win for him. He's a good guy to play with. But yeah, Legion is awesome, and also at Gen Con in 2018, Fantasy Flight announced that, because so far they've only done Galactic Civil War era, Empire versus Rebels in all their Star Wars stuff. At Gen Con, they announced that they would be bringing the Clone Wars both to X-Wing and to Legion. So I am currently dying with anticipation for the Clone Wars in Legion, because while I may hate the Rebels and only play the Empire, the Clone Wars will be something that I jump into with both feet for both factions. Like, droids or clones, I'm fine playing either. I can't wait. So my wallet is already weeping for when that happens. But Legion is super fun. I love it. I was nervous. Oh, that's the other thing. With X-Wing, the models come pre-painted. You are welcome to paint them after, if you wish, but they do come pre-painted to, like, movie, what you see in the movies.
Yeah.
With Legion and Imperial Assault, they do not. They just come, like, as a shade of gray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In Imperial Assault, you're not required or really expected to paint your minis. In Legion, the expectation, although it's not required, but the expectation is that you paint your minis. And so I was a little nervous, actually, because I'd never painted anything before, and I'm like, I'm not, like, super artistic. So I'm like, I don't want to, like, spend all this money on this game and then paint it and be like, wow, that totally sucks. Now you've ruined it. Congratulations, you big idiot. But it is surprisingly easy to paint your army and make it look halfway decent. I did it, which means, really, most of you should be able to as well. Really not hard, particularly if you play the Empire. It's called White Primer, and then you just paint the creases in your Stormtrooper's armor black for their undersuit. You're done!
Yeah.
Very easy. which is part of why I'm looking forward to the clones so much, because it will be the same idea. And then for the droids, hey, those B1 battle droids, give me some beige paint, done.
Yeah.
Should be fairly easy, but it is a lot of fun. And then, of course, painting 4 groups of stormtroopers where it's just white with a little bit of black and then like some highlights on the gun to make it not look like it's part of their hand.
Yeah.
You know, to make it look like metal and stuff. And I got kind of good, so then I kind of started experimenting, and now I'm kind of proficient at this painting thing. I'm no professional by any stretch of the imagination, but it really, I did improve in my painting very quickly. So that was fun in that respect as well. And like Ross has seen my Boba Fett, who looks, I have to say, I think he looks
Quite
pretty good. I've shown you my shock troopers, right? My stormtroopers
Yes.
that I just painted like red. Yeah. We've got Death Troopers coming in just a little bit, and I am so excited. But it's really fun. Each army, you've got like a point limit, just like in X-Wing. 800 points is the standard, and then each unit costs a certain amount. Then they have upgrades that they can take that also cost a certain amount. They all have different abilities and things like that, and so then you're just trying to outplay your opponent, roll dice to kill them and stuff. It's pretty fun. Pretty easy to learn. It seems kind of daunting at first, but a lot of... I've noticed this with X-Wing, with Legion, with Armada, is that FFG has a lot of rules because they anticipate a lot of different circumstances.
Yeah.
But once you play through a round or two of the particular game, you kind of... everything becomes really intuitive, and you kind of get like, oh, that's why that rule's there. Okay, that makes total sense. And then it's just kind of there. It's kind of ingrained. It's very, very easy to pick up their games. X-Wing might be the easiest, although Legion is actually pretty easy to learn, now that I think about it. They're all pretty easy to learn. So that's Legion. Oh, it's so good. Then last, the best of all the game, my baby, my love.
Star Wars
Armada. Oh, it's so good! Armada is so amazing. I could do an entire show, and we will be doing an entire show just on Armada. It's so good. Oh, man. Armada, released March 27th, 2015. Genre, strategy board game. Players 2 or 2 to 6. Setup time, 30 minutes. Playing time, 2 to 4 hours. Cost, $100 for the core set. It is not cheap to get into.
I didn't remember paying that much. I probably got it on
You
eBay.
probably got, I think you did. I think you
Yeah.
told me you got it on like Amazon for like $50 or something like that.
Well, Amazon is usually full retail. It had to have been eBay.
Oh, yeah,
well,
maybe.
Amazon does have
They'll do
other
some
sellers
discount,
that
yeah.
they'll- not as quality. Not if you're looking for low price, not usually.
Yeah.
The cheapest expansions are $20. They go up to $50 for the most expensive. There's also the Corellian Conflict campaign expansion, which I think is like $30, something
And
like
there are
that.
a lot of these expansions.
Not as many as X-Wing.
Just looking at the list online, there was quite a few.
That's true. But out between X-Wing, Legion, Imperial Assault, and Armada has the fewest
Now
expansions.
that I'm looking at X-Wing, you're right. Yeah, that is...
Because X-Wing has typically 4 waves released per year, and each wave is typically
you're
at
right,
least
man.
4 ships. So you're talking about 24 new
walk
ships a
back
year
on
in
that
X-Wing.
statement.
Yeah. So we already kind of talked about why that was a downside for X-Wing, is they released so quickly they weren't necessarily able to foresee the power creep coming. And so then you'd get to the end of the year, and the ships that were released at the beginning of the year are no longer valid. Armada has a much slower, at this point, too slow, FFG, release schedule for their expansions. The benefit to that is you have a long time to see how those upgrades are working in the meta, so that you can see if there maybe needs to be a counter upgrade in the next one or something like that, or some sort of adjustment. It takes 1 billion years to play, according to my wife. Oh, Armada has the single most expensive expansion out of any FFG game. The imminently forthcoming Super Star Destroyer, retailing for $200.
Oh,
Granted, the model itself is 2 feet long. The
Yeah.
base of the ship is a little over 14 inches. It's a massive beast, and I cannot wait to field it. I might get 2. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Oh man, this game, I got into this game in late May of 2015. So shortly after it was released. And here's how I got into this game. It was really funny. So I had bought X-Wing that same year, like the early part of that year. And I was like, man, this is a fun game. This is cool. Like it. and I was playing it with a couple of friends of mine this one friend was very into all kinds of miniature games and Star Wars, loved Star Wars, so the marriage of those two things was right up his alley, as it has now become mine. And so we played a couple of games of X-Wing, and I'm like, man, this game is super fun, and we were just talking about Star Wars and different things, and I'm like, you know what would be really great, though? If somebody were to make, like, this X-Wing game, but for the capital ships. That would be super cool. And he's like, they do. And I'm like, say what now? And he's like, yeah, they just released it. It's called Armada. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And he's like, I have it. Do you want to play? And I'm like, are you an idiot? Of course I want to. Bring it over. So he came over the next week. We played Armada, just the core set stuff. He taught me how to play. And I'm like, this is amazing. This game is fantastic. You know what would make this game even more fantastic is if they made the Imperial Star Destroyer instead of the Victory Star Destroyer. And he said, as a matter of fact, that ship just dropped like last week. Just released. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I went out and bought one. Right away. And I've not stopped buying. Was that even
before you had the core set?
That was before I had the core set. The very first thing in Armada I bought was the ISD.
And see, I did similar where I liked the expansion sets because of the detailed models, and then just wanted to have them.
They're so pretty. Yeah. Like, even if you don't play the game, the models are gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, they are.
Yeah. So, unlike X-Wing, Armada is not to scale with itself. If Armada were to scale with itself, you wouldn't be able to play it.
Yeah.
I once did the math. I'll have to do it again so it's more specific, but I did the math. The smallest thing in the game, the smallest piece in the game is the TIE Fighter. And so I'm like, okay, if a TIE Fighter is this big in Armada, and it's this big in real life, what would, let's say...
Real life.
Shut up, Ross.
In canon.
In canon, in real life, Ross. Put your finger quotes down. Then how big would like a Star Destroyer be, for example?
Right.
And it came out to something like 10 feet, like a little over 10 feet long for an Imperial Star Destroyer. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's why this game isn't to scale with itself.
Yes.
Because there's just no way to do it. Which is why I always find it really, really funny when people on the Armada forums will complain about, we can't have X ship in the game. This was actually the argument against the Super Star Destroyer. We can't have the Super Star Destroyer in the game. The scale will be all off. It's, it'll be either too small or not powerful enough, or it'll be too big, you can't play with it. And I was like, guys, do you realize that since the core set of this game, the scale has been off? We're supposed to fit a Corellian Corvette inside the hangar bay of the Imperial Star Destroyer. In order for the Corellian Corvette to fit inside of the model ISD that they provide for this game, the Corvette itself would have to be about the size of one of the squadrons. It would have to be about the size of the Millennium Falcon piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which means your Rebel transports that are half the size of the Corellian Corvette would have to be half the size of the Millennium Falcon. So we're talking about 2 millimeters long. A Corellian Corvette is several times longer than an X-Wing. Like 6 or 7 times. So you're telling me you want fighters to be a fraction of a millimeter large so that we can have this game to scale. So that your Corvette can fit in an ISD. So that the ISD can be a tenth the size of the SSD.
Guys, I kind of do, but...
I mean, I do too, right? But, but practically speaking, for this game, it makes no sense. So
understandable choice to forego the
well, and it was obvious from the beginning. There's no way you can make a game like Armada and keep it exactly to scale with itself like you do with X-Wing. Because that's the cool thing about X-Wing, is like the Raider or the Corvette in X-Wing are still to scale with the TIE Fighters and stuff. They kept it the same 1/270th scale, so they're quite large. But, oh boy, this Super Star Destroyer for Armada is going to be just glorious. I can hardly wait to kill Ross with it.
And you will.
Oh, it's going to be so good, Ross. Brace yourself. But, oh man, it is a very good game. Armada is excellent. I love strategy games that require you to think ahead. Okay? Checkers is a great game, but you really only need to think like one move ahead of your opponent. There's really not a lot. Checkers is really reactionary.
Yeah.
Whereas chess, you need to be thinking 5, 6, 7 moves ahead of your opponent if you actually care to win. Or win without losing, everything you have. You need to be thinking ahead. X-Wing is like checkers. A fun game, but mostly reactionary.
Right.
Armada is like chess. Armada is 6 rounds long, and if you play the Imperials like I do, you are planning out your first 3 moves before the game starts. Literally. Each ship has a command dial that is going to tell you what command that ship gets that turn. And a Star Destroyer has to plan out 3 turns ahead. So at the end of round 1, I take that command dial and I plan out turn 4 and stick it on the bottom of the pile. So you have to be thinking very far ahead in Armada. Which I love, right? Because then it becomes more of a game of the mind and outwitting your opponent rather than, well, I got a lucky dice roll.
Yeah.
Well, I moved out of the way. Like, you're going to move here, which means I need to move here so that I can move out of the way.
Yeah.
Not like a luck of the draw thing. It's, I need to move here so that you come here to attack this ship, which allows me to move this other ship into position and close the trap. You've got to be thinking very tactically like that, which I love. I just love it. I love it so much. I've got way more Armada stuff than I'm willing to admit. Fortunately, as one of our local community members put it, I have become the Pablo Escobar of Star Wars minis in the area. Which means I usually pick up Armada and Legion stuff for cheap and then resell it to my friends for less than retail, but enough where I make some money. That's where my Gen Con fun money comes from. But yeah, there was one time where I bought a lot and kept some stuff. After breaking even and selling some stuff, so I actually came out ahead. I think I made like $50 on this lot and still kept $160 worth of stuff for myself. It was pretty good. But Armada is so great. You've got everybody you can think of for Star Wars in there. You've got all your great captains and admirals. You've got Ozzel, who sucks. Captain Nita, who is very great situationally. You've got Darth Vader, who is great, but also kind of ruthless. He forces your ship to lessen its own defenses so that you can reroll your attacks and potentially deal more damage. Which is, it's got its uses.
Yeah, that's...
Admiral Mahdi, he increases your ship's health. I only know the Imperials because I only play the Imperials, even though I have everything the Rebels have as well. Because the ships are just, as Ross said, gorgeous. The models are... I don't have room now because I have way too many, but I used to have all my models displayed on my bookcases and stuff in front of my books just so I could look at them throughout the day.
And see, I had several models sitting on my desk, but I hate dusting.
Yes, they do get dusty.
I hate seeing the dust on them, and so now I've packed most of them all away again. But
into the foam that I got you for Christmas. You're welcome.
Yes.
Yep. Foam trays for his ships. Good times. Gotta keep those ships safe. But yeah, Armada is fantastic, and if I'm going to recommend just one of these games, it is definitely Armada. Armada is also older, right? It's older than X-Wing, it's older than it's younger than X-Wing, younger than Imperial Assault. So it has the benefit of sort of learning from their mistakes.
Yeah.
And it has a much slower release date, or release time for their waves. Too slow at this point, FFG, please take note. In 2018, we got one wave in February. Which was announced the previous August. So it hasn't been great. We're supposed to be getting the SSD, the Super Star Destroyer, in early Q1 2019. So we are rapidly approaching the end of that deadline.
Yeah.
Hopefully it gets here soon. But Armada's really fantastic. I can't say enough good about it. I can and will go on at length about it in a different episode.
Oh. Before we finished up, I wanted to just quick, Fantasy Flight Games. We're talking about mainly the Star Wars games, but they're a respected game company, and I just wanted to real quick, jump at, mention a few of our favorite games that are not Star Wars related.
Sure, yeah.
Because, hey, why not? Plug Fantasy Flight. I first really became aware of Fantasy Flight just a few years ago. I was presenting at a symposium on games, and one of the people I was presenting with was a writer who writes, I'm sure she writes more, but she specifically mentioned that she wrote for Fantasy Flight Games, which is when I went, well, that sounds familiar. And she went, oh yeah, sure, Legend of the Five Rings is what I first I was like, oh yeah, I know them, Rokugan. Okay. And then she went, and then she's like, they do Star Wars, they've done this, and I was like, oh, okay, wow, yeah, I do know a lot of them. And since then, I've made sure to be aware of, oh yeah, there's a little Fantasy Flight logo, and so yeah, Mari, hi, if you're listening. Thanks for making me aware of what Fantasy Flight Games was. She wrote some great fiction for the Legend of the Five Rings. They released a bunch of short stories last year, and she wrote some of that. But yeah, some of my personal favorites are like they're very well known for Arkham Horror and Mansions of Madness, which are ones that I wanted to play and haven't gotten around to yet. Age of War that you gave us is a Fantasy Flight
I did
game.
not realize that.
Yeah, that's
Age
one
of
of
War is a really super fun game.
Now, and this is like, if you're looking for a really simple, quick play,
Yes.
it's a lot of fun. It's one of my son's favorite games. They are 5 and 2. The 2-year-old can play this game.
Yep.
Like, it's a little tricky for him. He doesn't quite, he knows he rolls the dice, and he's not quite clear on what happens next. But he can get through the most of it. He wiped the floor with us the other night when we played this.
So the reason I got that game specifically for Chris, we were introduced to it by an older couple that we met while I was in grad school who liked to play games. They'd have us over for dinner and a game night, every now and again. And so we played that game there, and I'm like, this game is fantastic. The great thing about Age of War is it literally takes about 5 minutes to learn, if that.
Oh yeah, it is extremely simple.
And it is simple enough that kids can play it. Because my girls at the time, I think, were like 5, maybe 6, something like that. And they picked up on it, again, about 5 minutes of explaining the rules to them, and they understood it. But it is nuanced enough and challenging enough that my wife and I can play it against each other. And there's still quite a lot of strategy involved. Yeah.
And it's quick too. It doesn't overstay its welcome.
It takes about 20 minutes maybe to finish a game.
Simple, quick, easy, fun. My 5-year-old and 2-year-old will play this just on their own.
Yeah.
Just the two of them.
Yep, yeah, if we go on long road trips or something like that, we'll bring it because my girls can play it in the van.
Oh yeah, and it's very small, it's comparatively inexpensive. It's a great place to start.
It's got
if you're looking for Fantasy
13 little cards and 6 dice or something like that. It's very, very compact. But yeah, it's a great game, and it's pretty cheap too. It was like $20 or something like that.
Yeah, it's even less than that.
Yeah, maybe.
We just got it for some friends, and So
it's a great game.
We might have spent less than that on your Christmas present if you're listening to this. But,
no, Chris spent an exorbitant amount of money because he cares deeply about you.
Yes, they're great people. But,
I didn't realize that was them.
I noticed that the other day when I was playing it with my boys. Yeah. I was like, oh, hey, look at that! There's
a
little
super fun game.
Yeah, it is a good one. And then one of my other favorites from them that we have is what is more obscure. Is one that probably if there's anyone from Fantasy Flight listening to this, they'll probably be like, oh, you actually played that. And maybe, I don't know. It's hard to find these days. I know because I tracked it down so my wife could own it, and it was hard to find for any sort of even halfway decent price. I don't think they have it in print anymore. It's called Red November.
I've never heard of that.
And yeah, no, exactly. And part of the reason I think it might have not done quite as well is it is a little harder to wrap your head around and get through the rules of this game. I do not recommend necessarily playing this from scratch unless you've got a lot of time, and preferably someone who has played it before to help walk you through it.
So it's like drugs in D&D. You have to know somebody to get into it.
Exactly. It helps with that. But it's a cooperative board game where you are playing as a group of gnomes in a steampunk submarine that has had some sort of catastrophic emergency occur, and you are sunk and without power, and you are trying to survive inside the submarine, keeping it from flooding, keeping places from catching on fire, keeping your core from overheating, etc., etc. Hopefully avoiding the kraken that's down there in the depths. And
this sounds amazing.
It's a headache to get through that first playthrough and just wrap your head around. Wait, what's going on? Because the system of playthrough is you can take as much time as you want. You have units of time that you use up, and it goes around the board, but then everyone else has to use the same amount of time. So you might use up, I'm going to use 10 minutes here, and then everyone else only uses 4 minutes on their turn, so they all get turns before you do until they catch up. And it's a little tricky to work your head around.
Handle it.
And things just keep going wrong, and so you have to scramble trying to survive. Or there's also an option if one person gets lucky enough, if they happen to get the scuba gear and everything, they can ditch. In the last 10 minutes of the game, they can ditch the sub and swim to safety and leave everyone else to die. But you only win if you do that if everyone else fails to save the sub and survive until rescue comes. Because if they do, then you're a deserter and you lose.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, it is a blast. We played this with the same friends that we just bought Age of War for, so
I
They
believe
should
Fantasy
know what
Flight
they
also
got
does the
before
werewolf
they hear this episode.
games.
Maybe? I don't know
Think
about those.
maybe? Anyway.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. We'll have to play it sometimes because I like I said, I hunted it down and it was tricky, but we have it
Yeah.
now. And,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
yeah. Any others that you guys particularly fond of?
I can't. Well, okay. So there are other Star Wars games. There's a
there's
whole
the
bunch
Star Wars
of
card
rebellion.
game.
Well,
Star
it's, like,
Wars the
discontinued.
card game. Yeah, but it's out there.
Yeah.
And then the Star Wars role playing game.
so yeah, the other big Fantasy Flight Star Wars game that we did not mention are the role playing games like the Age of Rebellion, Scum and Villainy, whatever. We're gonna do a different episode about those because there's so much that it was.
We'll probably talk
Gonna-
about the old 3.5 based role playing
Yes,
game
and why
that
they're
too.
better.
I haven't played the Fantasy
Yeah.
Flight role playing version, so I know a lot of people who like it.
Anyway, so we'll talk about those in another time, but I can't think of anything because really, mostly for Fantasy Flight, I
You're on the
go
Star
there
Wars,
for the
yeah.
Star Wars
Yeah,
stuff.
that's fair.
I know they do like a Lord of the Rings thing. I know they
They
came
do
out
have
with
some Lord of the
a
Rings. They have
Game
some
of
Game of Thrones, yeah.
They have like a Game of Thrones like card game, but I'm not sure if it's like Magic or if it's something else. I have no idea. I just know that it's a card game.
Yeah,
I
they
know
also
that-
have a board game.
Yes,
Yeah.
they have the board game, but they also have a miniature war game thing. So
Yeah.
kind of like Legion or Warhammer, but Game of Thrones, which looked kind of cool. Like I was looking at it,
They've
and I'm
got
like
a Battlestar Galactica board game.
I was looking at the Game of Thrones one. I'm like, the models look really cool because they look medieval, and so that, of course, anything remotely medieval. And I'm like, oh well, maybe. But then I was like, wait, what am I doing? I already have Star Wars. It's already a game like this. I will only play the Star Wars one. Okay, no, just walk away.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they have a lot of different
They have like
titles.
Gears of War. They have a lot of licensed titles. I'm
Yes,
impressed
they
by
do.
how many of these they have. But
So, I mean, Fantasy Flight Games, and I'll say this, they do put out a good product. Well, this will never come up in any other episodes, so I'll bring it up now. Apparently, right before they launched Legion, Fantasy Flight Games launched a land-based miniature war game of their own called Rune Wars, which was sort of a fantasy thing. So you had kind of like the undead, you had the elves, you had the humans, you had like abominations, like just other sort of monsters. And it was like most war games, right? You're moving your units around, you're measuring distance for different attacks, you're rolling dice, you're removing dead units. Pretty straightforward stuff. Not long after they launched Rune Wars, along comes Legion. And I was about to actually get into Rune Wars. Because I'm like, Armada's really cool. Rune Wars looks really cool, though I'm getting better in... I wanted to paint because I started watching Painters Guild on Geek and Sundry with Will Friedle. And I was like, I think I could do this. Like, I don't suck as bad as Will Friedle, so I mean, clearly I could get away with doing this. You think I'm being mean, but go watch that. He's bad. He's frighteningly bad. So I'm like, if Will Friedle can do this, so can I, by golly. So I was starting to get my confidence up, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get Rune Wars. And then as I actually had like the core set in my hand, getting ready to buy it, and I was like, you know what, though? This would be so much cooler if it were just Star Wars. Like, man, and I'm like, it's kind of expensive for a game that I wish were a different game.
yeah.
So, I'll put it on the shelf for now, and then we'll maybe come back to this, because it does look pretty cool. And probably a week later, they announced Legion.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait! Same company, same kind of game, only now it's Star Wars. Done. I'm so glad I didn't buy Rune Wars. Poor Steven, our faithful listener Steven, he was about 2 weeks ahead of me.
Oh.
He was like, man, I would love a land-based game. I'll get this Rune Wars game. Bought a bunch of the expansions. They announced Legion. He's like, fetch. Okay, well, I'm not getting into Rune Wars anymore. So the point of this funny story is, apparently, as of today, if you're into Star Wars Armada or X-Wing or Legion at all, then you know who Krabok is. He's a YouTuber. He gets a lot of stuff for free from Fantasy Flight so that he can sort of promote it for them, because their community engagement people need to be fired. Yeah, I'll say it to your face, Fantasy Flight. I already have on Twitter. Anyway, I didn't get a chance to watch the video before we recorded because I saw it like literally as I was walking into Ross's house. But apparently Rune Wars has been canceled.
Really?
They killed their own unique title and license by introducing Legion.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, well, to be fair, unique product nobody's ever heard of, Star Wars.
Hard to battle the franchise.
You're going to get steamrolled. And particularly, and like, to their credit, when you make a game as solid as Legion, like, because it is a very solid game, like, it's very well balanced. It's very thematic. The Empire feels very Empire-y. The Rebels feel very Rebel. It's a very well-made game. So you did good. You just did so good that you killed your own your own product, which is, I just think it's funny. Because I have no soul and I am entertained by Schadenfreude. But, yeah.
So, one more question. I'm going to
Oh, and then my story.
Yeah.
That Ross doesn't remember.
You do that and then I'll jump on.
So, once upon a time, there was a man named Chris Roberts.
Yeah.
Who made a game called or is making a game called Star Citizen, and it's awesome, and you should go support it and back it because it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
He has a community manager named Disco Lando, also known as Jared
Huckabee.
That's right. I was going to say Hess, and I'm like, no, that's another person I know. Jared Huckabee. Disco Lando is who he's known as in that community. He's a super chill, super cool, awesome guy. Ross remembers the story now.
I remember the instance you're talking about, yeah.
Yep, so we went to like a little... so we have a very fortunate circumstance. Ross used to live very near to Disco Lando's actual father in the real world.
Yep.
Who Disco Lando would come to visit frequently because he's a good and loving son.
Well, but also that father was also getting into the game.
Yeah.
And we're talking, this is a Vietnam vet that was getting into a video game.
Yeah, he's like this old man who's like super
cool.
into this computer game. And he's got like I wish I had his rig. He's got like this cool chair. He's got like 3 or 4 massive screens for this game. He's got like this entire like man cave dedicated to the playing of this game.
And they've moved since they were in we went down there. Now he has like a shed. It's all in his shed.
He is so cool. So both Dad Lando and Disco Lando are very cool people. So Dad Lando, being a fan of yeah. It would be, except it's Dad
Disco,
Lando.
That's right.
But he's I don't care if he's Land Dad. That probably got thrown around early, but Dad Lando is the nickname that stuck,
Lando
so that's what he went
Dadrizian.
with. There you go, Lando Dadrizian. I love it. So his dad is just as big a fan of this game as us young bucks, and so he said, "Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we all get together the next time Disco Lando comes out here, and I'll have him come over and tell you guys about the game, like an insider's perspective, and tell us stuff. And like we could suggest stuff to him, and it was way cool.
Yeah.
So we organized this little thing. We get together. He comes out. Disco Lando, super chill. Like even though we were all fanboying and like clawing at him, he was
even on
super,
top of that,
super cool.
Dad Lando didn't tell him that's what was going to happen.
Oh yeah, he like ambushed him. Yeah, it was really great.
The Star Citizen community just likes to get together and just hang out, and so they call them bar citizens because usually they're in bars somewhere. And so that's what he thought he was coming to, was just a chill hangout. But Dad Lando had actually structured this whole like seminar,
like a seminar thing. We met at a hotel, like rented out like the conference room of a hotel.
It was incredible. But
it was awesome.
Yeah.
And he was so cool, and he like told us some funny stories from like just like office shenanigans and like pranks that people would pull, and just like way cool guy. And so then we had like a break for lunch catered at the hotel. Like it was like a whole thing.
Dang.
So while we're sitting there, I quickly saw where he was sitting and like snuck a table like kind of near him because I didn't want to be like all over him like a teenage girl, you know,
like several of the others were.
And it took all of my willpower not to be like them. And I'm like, don't do it. Just don't be normal, Kyler, you know? And so then I'm like trying to just get to know him because I'm like, he probably gets asked 1 million times a day about Star Citizen because frankly, that's what we're all doing here. And I don't blame anybody for doing it. I'm going to ask him just other stuff, just about himself, just regular human being questions. So
always a good idea.
Yeah, so I just started throwing out random stuff, and, you know, I'm like, so do you like Star Wars? He's like, dude, I love Star Wars. I'm like, that's awesome. Have you heard about X-Wing? Have you heard about
his screen name is Disco Lando.
Well, that's
used
why
to put together videos with a Lando Calrissian doll.
And they were hilarious. They were so good. I wish you would do more of them because they're hilarious. But, you know, that's why I felt that line of questioning was probably a safe, reasonable thing. I'm like, the guy's Disco Lando, Star Wars is probably a safe topic on the table here, you know. And turns out he had bought a ton of X-Wing. He had Armada, but had not played it. He had a bunch of Destiny stuff. I had not, because at this time, Ross and I lived about 3 hours apart.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to see Ross very often. So I was like, dude, before this shindig, happens, I'm going to bring Armada with me and we'll play a game before this thing starts.
Well, especially because we needed someone to sit in the room with all the stuff that he had set
well,
up,
and you and I hadn't seen each other in a long time,
Yeah.
so we needed the catch-up time. Anyway.
It all just worked out.
Yeah, it worked out really well. So I brought my Armada stuff to the hotel and we played right there in the conference room before everybody showed up. So we're finishing up the game as everybody, including Lando, is showing up, and we're like putting away the pieces and whatever. And he sees this and like doesn't say anything. And then after, as we're leaving, and I'm like walking by him, he's like, "Hey, was that Armada that you had?" I'm like, "Why, yes, it was." And he's like, "You asked about Armada at lunch, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, I did." And he's like, "I'm like, have you ever played?" And he's like, "No, I haven't." I'm like, "Well, I have all my stuff. My friend Ross here has all of his stuff. You're staying with your dad, who is not too far from my friend Ross. If you'd like, before you fly out tomorrow morning, we could totally teach you how to play." And he's like, "Let's do this." So after everybody goes away, he sends everybody home, we get the invite to go to Dad Lando's house and teach Disco Lando, like the head community manager for this massive game that we love, how to play Armada.
Well, you're remembering that wrong.
Oh.
It wasn't the next day.
Oh, no, that's right. It was
a couple weeks
later.
later.
A couple weeks later. He's like, that's right. Because he had to leave super early.
Right.
That's what it was. So
Right.
we offered him. He's like, I want to. I just don't have time. I'm coming back out here on this day. Let's do it then. That's what it was. You're right.
And we thought it was just like pleasantries.
Yeah.
But then days later, I
Ross
get this message
from Dad Lando,
Yeah.
like, hey, he's going to be here at this time to play this game that he's talking about.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I drive down again because I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. And so we teach him how to play Armada. We start talking about just everything, a little bit about the game, but just life in general. And and he's like, yeah, I love X-Wing. I'm super into it. I've bought every ship in triplicate. He's like, I've got all the stuff for Armada, but I've just never played it, and it's looks a little daunting. I'm like, well, we'll simplify it, and if you've played X-Wing, you can pick up Armada pretty easily. There's just a couple rules you have to sort of unlearn and relearn backwards. Because in X-Wing, for instance, you move and then you shoot.
Yeah.
In Armada, it's the other way. You shoot first, then your ship moves. So like little things like that. You just get a little backwards. And then one of the things that we were talking about there, and this is what sparked me when we were talking about Destiny in this episode, is that he's like, have you ever played Destiny? I'm like, I have not. I don't really know how to play card games. Card games with dice, it just, I can't wrap my head around it. And he's like, it's really awesome. Here's how the game works. I can't remember any of it now. And he's like, we should play X-Wing, or Destiny. He's like, next time I come out here or whatever, we'll have to try to find some time, and I'll have you guys down again, and I'll teach you guys X-Wing. You've taught me Armada, I'll teach you guys X-Wing. Destiny. Yes, I keep saying X-Wing, sorry. I'm so tired, guys. But it was really cool, so that was kind of a fun story.
That is
there.
Awesome. That's fun.
Fantasy Flight Games, bringing the world together.
Sure.
Now, my last question that I wanted to ask is, so hypothetically, let's say Fantasy Flight Games is actually listening to this for some reason.
Okay.
What's a Star Wars game you want to see? Branching out, like, not necessarily more of Armada or something you want changed in the games they have, but what's just like, what's something you'd like to see done in the Star Wars tabletop gaming arena?
See, and that's hard because they pretty much already have everything that I would
thought
like
that
to
might
see.
be your answer, yeah.
Because it's like, if you want dogfighting, X-Wing is a great game for it. It really is.
Yeah.
And the fact that Clone Wars is coming to it, awesome, great. More ships, the better. Awesome, fantastic.
Yeah.
I want them to bring Clone Wars into Armada. I want them to hustle up and bring the Clone Wars into Legion, which they've already announced. They have not announced it for Armada. They kind of gave us the wink and the nod at Gen Con and just said we can't talk about anything yet.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure it's coming to Armada, but they haven't officially said anything. So I would like to see that. I would love to have seen their role-playing system use the D20 system. That would have just made it way more accessible, way more simple. Yeah. But I don't know why people think they need to reinvent the wheel. The D20 system is really pretty great.
It is, but I get it. But I think if you're going to reinvent it, going the direction of here's a ton of new dice that you have to relearn and all that was the wrong direction to go. I like pointing to Planet Mercenaries system, Alan Barr's, what does he call it? It's just the It's I forget what he calls this system, but you're just using 3d6. It might just be the 3d6
Yeah,
system.
the D6 system.
It's a D6 system, yeah, maybe. But yeah, you just got 3d6, and that's basically all you need for the game. Which, to my ears, having played, having started back in 3.5 and having played games based off of 2.0 of D&D, that seems just like excessively simple. But no, it's very streamlined. It works beautifully. That's more the direction. I'd like to see it
I've
go,
actually thought of one. Okay, so they have a role playing system. Oh no, I guess that is okay. So, because things that what do I like about Star Wars? Right, for me personally, I've always loved since I was a little kid the big space battles.
Yeah.
I get to recreate that with Armada, so that is there. The next best thing are the ground battles, which I get to recreate with Legion. So my two biggest wishes for me getting to play out Star Wars in some way are already being fulfilled.
Yeah.
After that, X-Wing is, right, dogfighting is cool. The X-Wing and TIE fighters outside the Death Stars is always awesome, and they've got that in X-Wing. So my biggest ones are already there. So then I started to think, okay, well, Imperial Assault, not necessarily my jam.
Yeah.
But I think I would like to see them make D&D minis for their role-playing game, which you could potentially use Legion minis for.
They'd be a
but
little
there's
small
not
for that, yeah.
Well, no, they wouldn't actually. The Legion minis are actually bigger than regular D&D minis.
Yeah. I never play with miniatures when I play D&D, so...
Yeah, the D&D minis tend to be around 15 millimeters. No, that's too small. Let's see, because I know the Legion miniatures are 28 millimeters, and they're a little taller than regular D&D minis. Oh yeah, Ross has some right here.
Yeah.
Okay,
so Ross's...
oh yeah, well,
they are just slightly...
bigger.
Legion's just slightly bigger.
Oh, well, what do you know?
Yeah, so it's like maybe 20 millimeters or something like that for a regular D&D mini, versus 28 for a Legion.
It's close enough.
They're close enough you could use, but here's the thing,
much
like if you don't have, like... Because nobody, to my knowledge, is making Star Wars D&D minis. Nobody. They make bunches of fantasy ones, but nobody's making Star Wars ones.
Right.
So you could use Legion ones for a D&D campaign.
I would just use Lego. But...
I've got enough Lego Star Wars. I could do that too. But the downside of that is, like with regular D&D minis, there is enough variation, there's enough diversity in product that you can usually find a miniature that kind of represents what you're looking for.
Yeah, and then
character.
maybe kitbash it a bit to get it where you want it.
Right, exactly, but it would be much harder to do that with Legion.
Yeah.
There's just... Yeah, there's no like unique sort of hero.
Well, yeah, and everything's based off of the movies, so there's a paucity of actually what.
So it would be harder. So I maybe bring a line of minis to supplement your D&D game. I think would be the best addition
that could be fun.
That I would want to see.
What about you, Russ?
My only complaints with like Armada or any of these other Legion and all that is that if you're gonna do a battle, I want it to be massive.
Yeah.
I want there to be hundreds of people reprepreted in the...
Ross, wait till the Clone Wars comes to Legion. There will be hundreds on either side. Because I'm going to buy them.
But as far as play them, that's not the same.
It will take you all day. That's the thing, because Armada has, grand, huge versions of the game. So a standard game of Armada is 400 points. Which usually will get you between, 2 really big ships, 2 Star Destroyers, and, a couple of little things.
Yeah.
Or you can go smaller and do, the Home One and, 3 or 4 Corvettes. Yeah. But really, you're looking between, 2 to about 6 ships per side in a 400-point game. Mm-hmm. Armada's campaign, the Corellian Conflict, the final battle for that is a 1,500-point game per side. So each person... There's up to 6 people playing, and each person gets a 500-point fleet. So you end up with 3 500-point fleets versus 3 500-point fleets playing on the same map.
Yeah.
Helping each other out, attacking each other. And those games, it's literally show up at 10 o'clock on Saturday when your game store opens, and you better hurry up because, oh my gosh, they're closing.
Yeah.
That's literally how our last campaign went. We were there when they unlocked the doors, waiting outside. We all had to part the Red Sea for the guy to unlock the door. We rushed in, started setting things up as fast as we could, and we literally, they were hey, are you guys about done? Because we're literally locking the store up for the night. And we're like, yeah, it'll be like 5 more minutes before we get our stuff out, and then we're out of here. And they're like, okay, just, as you know, so as long as you're getting out of here. Yeah, we know, we're already done playing, we're still cleaning up. It takes an hour to clean up. It was literally, from 10 till 11. Right. 10 in the morning till 11 at night.
So it is there, but it's cumbersome.
Well, but
Yes.
even still, that's the thing, is that I'd like to do something on a large scale, but of course have it a lot simpler.
Yeah.
I like my closest analogy would be like a more complicated Risk.
Yeah.
But like,
So
even that,
that's the thing, is there are war games out there that are like that. Warhammer has like versions of it. I think it's Warhammer.
Yeah.
Where the minis are super teeny. Like your base infantry is like the size of your thumbnail or whatever, so that you can have the giant things and still have them be like a reasonable size to move around. And then those, it looks like it's, there's 4,000 guys on this side, or whatever. But then you lose some of the fine detail of the smaller guys. And since, like, with Star Wars, it's like, you want to see that your stormtroopers, you want to see the detail, and they do look good. Like, their models look amazing. Oh, should have mentioned this. Legion, by the way, is to scale with itself, like X-Wing is. And they've made their units, their base units, like Luke Skywalker or the Stormtroopers or whatever, about as small as you can make them and retain the level of detail that they want to show. Yeah. Anything smaller than that, and you're going to have, it's a stick figure with a lightsaber. Cool.
Yeah.
That's Luke. Okay.
Yeah.
But then, it does sort of limit the physical space that you can reasonably work with.
Well, and I'd be happy with something like, you don't have individual units, you have squads, and that sort of thing.
Well, but that's what Legion is like a unit of stormtroopers is 5
not
guys.
what I mean is, but
you mean
five
like
separate
40 guys.
Yeah, 40 guys on one base,
Okay.
I'm thinking more like, give me something more like Total War.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say, is to get to the scale you want, to reduce the cumbersomeness of it, you're essentially talking about a computer game.
Basically. I mean, I am kind of
Which is why I love Empire at War, because especially
Yeah.
with some of the mods where they up the ridiculously small population limit, so
Yeah.
you can actually have a decent battle. But
Well,
that's exactly what you're talking about.
Now that you have hardware to support the larger, larger scale battles.
But that's essentially what you're talking about, is you want a computer game. And I
the computer would be the
I
easiest
am
way
not
to do
knocking
it.
your
Yeah.
idea, by the way. I'm all down. If anybody out there wants to make a really killer Star Wars computer game that can handle
You know
armies
what?
of thousands of people, I will give you money.
And Total War's done Warhammer.
That's what I'm saying. I hope
mean-
that they do. I really hope that
could
somebody
be-
out there needs to do a
Star Wars
mod.
has a rich strategy game history, and
Yep.
the Total War Creative Assembly.
They do
I
it
think-
better than anybody
Yeah,
else.
they're basically the only ones doing it right now too.
Yep,
So,
they are
they really
the
are.
best strategy game people out there for sure. And I would love for them to do a Star Wars mod. I've often thought that myself. That,
Yeah.
hey, we've done your Warhammer, and that was very well received, both critically and
Yes, it
just
was.
like straight purchases. Like, it knocked all sales out of the water. And don't tell me Star Wars doesn't have at least as big a fan base playing computer games as Warhammer.
See, I mean, I hate to bring up old topics, but like, someone just needs to wrestle that license away from EA, because EA will never let that
yeah.
happen.
Yeah. Nor will EA make a decent game.
No.
Man.
So I'm all about narrative, of course.
Yeah.
So what it didn't even occur to me until we were sitting here, and then I was just like, oh man, that could be interesting. I think I could build something around that. So I'm sure Fantasy Flight could do it even better. I would like to see something like Arkham Horror, Mansions of Madness, like Betrayal at House on the Hill, something heavily narrative based. But instead of the madness and great old ones, or the traitor mechanic from Betrayal at the House on the Hill, you have the dark side and falling to the dark side. And so
Wow.
you have some setting far
That could be
removed from
fun.
the original trilogy, where you've just got a couple, Old Republic, couple of new characters that they've created, and just a array of scenarios where you've got these like apprentice Jedi who are struggling in some nasty scenario and trying not to fall to
That
the
would
dark
be
side.
actually really pretty fun.
I think it could be
That
a
would be
lot
cool.
of fun, and I would love to see. I'd love just some original characters in a not very heavily done setting, and basically just make a horror game like those, but in Star Wars with the dark side as the horror element. And I think that could be a blast. So
Yeah.
That's a good idea. I like that.
So hey, if you're listening, Fantasy Flight, it's all yours. You go right ahead. I mean, obviously, you have the right to those games, so it's all yours.
Yeah, literally, legally, it's
Yes.
all yours.
I cannot do anything with this, so please.
You might as well.
Have it. Have at it. But yeah, that's what I'd love to see, so. Please, Fantasy Flight. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, hey, thanks for all you've done, Fantasy Flight. You're a great company.
Yes, I mean, and that's, I've done a lot of whining and complaining about Fantasy Flight. They do make killer products.
Yeah.
You can't argue with that. The one problem is we just wish they would be more communicative with the fan base. And
Fair enough.
I see that in the Legion community, I see it in the Armada community, I see it in the X-Wing community. Like, literally, for every single game they have lots of really diehard fans that are like, this is an amazing game. We would just like you to acknowledge that we're here.
Yeah.
And answer a question once in a while. Or even, like, and this is I was talking about this tonight, actually. I played a game of Armada just before coming over here tonight to record. And I was talking about it with my opponent. Hi, Kyle. You're listening now. He actually is. He started listening just a couple weeks ago. And we were both talking about how, look, I understand that you're a company who's working on things and that you might not necessarily be ready to talk about those things. I totally get that. Like, that's the world we live in. I get it. But what you could say is, hey, Armada fans, I know February of 2018 was the last time you got a new product from us. Don't worry, we're still working on new things for you, but we're not ready to talk about it yet. If they came out with a tweet...
We don't want to put out something inferior.
If they put out a tweet that said that and that only, I would be happy, because I would finally have acknowledgement that Fantasy Flight is aware that Armada is a game that they're licensing, apparently, that they've forgotten about.
And that people want more of.
And the people want more of. And I'm okay with you saying, look, we're not going to give you everything right now, but don't worry, we are working on it. I'm cool. I don't need you to tell me what you're working on. I don't need you to tell me what step in the process you're on. Just let me know, yeah, we haven't forgotten about Armada. We are working on new ships for you guys. We're just not ready for it yet. Okay, cool, I'm done. But the thing is, they don't do that, and they don't do that with any of their games, as far as I can tell. Like, for any, not just the Star Wars people, like, all of their forums basically have this universal complaint of, you never tell us anything. And sometimes when you do tell us, it's late. Like, we got the Wookiees for Legion, and then, like, the next day, we got the article previewing the Wookiees.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, it's bad.
Whoa.
It's really bad. Like, they were on the shelf, and then the next day it was like, oh, here's the Wookiees. You can pre-order these from our site. Or pre-order them through your local game store. I'm like, yeah, I know. They're on the shelf right behind me.
Wow.
And
That's
it's like,
rough.
we're supposed to have the Super Star Destroyer in, according to them, what they said in their seminar at Gen Con, early first quarter 2019. We are now halfway through the early part of the first quarter of 2019.
Well, you've still got 2 more months. Well,
The early part of quarter one.
Early quarter one does kind of...
They said early
does kind of
quarter
lend
one.
itself towards January, so...
January, I'm going, okay, so by the end of the second week in February, I should have this in my hands.
Or at least more news.
Right. That's the thing, is they gave one... So Fantasy Flight, when they release a product, they'll give you, like, a teaser article where they'll show you, like, for Armada, for instance, they'll show you, like, one upgrade card and be like, stay tuned for more. And then, like, usually, like, a month before it releases, they'll be like, here's all the cards that are coming in this expansion. Here's what this ship can do. Go get hyped. Go buy it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We've got so they announced the Super Star Destroyer at Gen Con in August, beginning of August 2018.
Yeah.
It was like December or November when we got the teaser article that said, here's the Emperor Admiral card that comes with this. Here's what the Emperor as your commander can do. Here's his abilities. Okay, and then they showed one ship card. They were like, there are 4 variants of the Super Star Destroyer that you can field. Here's one of them, the cheapest option. Okay, cool, this is exciting. So, and this was in I think this was in November, so we're like, cool, so we'll get the actual reveal article, like, end of December. We'll get it in January. Awesome. This is, like, right on track. Not only have they not released anything from themselves, but they gave a full spreadsheet to Game Trade magazine. It was the centerpiece of their December issue, with all the cards spoiled, all 4 variants there. Oof. And when fans picked it up, and started doing videos on it, they got hit with cease and desist by Fantasy Flight. And said, we haven't released this from our website, you can't show images. I have that very spreadsheet from Game Trade Magazine that I took from the outside, or the inside of the store's magazine. It's in my Armada box right now at home. I have it. I can look at it. It's from Fantasy Flight. It's got their trademark image on it. This is as official as it gets, but I can't show pictures of it online. Because Fantasy Flight hasn't shown pictures of it online. And it's like, what are you doing? What are you trying to hide? You've already given the information to the public. So why cease and desist? And since you have already released the information to Game Trade Magazine, which is not a small magazine for your game store community, you know, why not just put the article out yourself then already? You've already done all of the work and given it out already. Just put the submit button, for heaven's sakes. You know what I mean? And don't punish people like Krabok who are putting videos out on it.
Yeah, that's a...
Yeah.
His video was up about 24 hours before he got the email saying, hey, take it down. Okay, why? He's not showing anything that hasn't been released to the public already.
Well, especially when he's someone that they work with so much to...
Correct.
To advertise.
He is probably their biggest fan community member. Like, he's like the number one YouTube guy for Armada and X-Wing and Legion.
Yeah.
He's like one of their top contributors on their forums. Like, they literally sent him the Profundity and Chimera expansion packs for free so that he could do an unboxing before it hit stores and show people what was in there.
Dang.
It's like, this is the... And then you tell this guy, take that video down. That you may... Take the video about the thing that we released in a public magazine down.
That's weird.
It's mind-bogglingly stupid.
That is odd, yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for the products, though.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what I said, too, to the guy that I played with tonight. I'm like, look, Fantasy Flight, you make good stuff. I want to give you my money.
Yeah.
I really do. I want you to take my money. But you have to have something for me to buy in order for me to give you my money. So, when you don't tell me that Armada stuff is coming out for a year, like, literally, the last announcement we got for something new in Armada was Gen Con of 2017, when they said, hey, here's Wave 7, it's the Profundity and the Chimera. And then it releases in February, and then we get no news at all until the surprise at Gen Con when they say, by the way, the Super Star Destroyer is coming. And we still have no news about a regular wave or anything else coming. In a year and a half. You know, it's terrible. Terrible communication. So please, Fantasy Flight, let me give you my money. Just tell me where and how and when and what it will be. Okay, let's end this episode. I'm sure everyone is sick of me whining about Fantasy Flight. Oh boy. Ross, any shout-outs or anything?
Yes. So, I would like to mention in particular, if I can get it pulled up. Oh no, it's moved away. Come back. We've had some fun posts on the Facebook, per the norm, that in response to our Captain's episode.
Oh, yeah.
Steven wanted to drive home apparently his vote for Best Captain. Sweet. And has posted a very smug and or dubious looking Captain Crunch.
Yep. That's right. Steven's standing in solidarity with me.
No context. He doesn't leave a comment on it or anything.
It was awesome.
It's just this Captain Crunch. It's just I don't know, just bold as brass.
I still think that's a valid choice. My wife disagreed.
I also disagree.
I think your logic was suspect, but hey.
I love Very Colossal Crunch, okay? And I'm probably not going to die, at least not violently.
Yeah, that I'll grant you that one. That survivability is probably high there.
Because my wife was like, yeah, but you said there are magical monsters. I'm like, no, it did not say the word monsters. It just said unusual creatures. Okay? No monsters anywhere. I'm probably safe.
That's fair.
You assume a lot, sir. And then...
what else was that episode about? Making wild assumptions.
You assume too much.
Yeah. Wait, what's that from? I should know this.
That's episode
my brain
1.
is shutting down.
Yeah. That's episode 1.
That's right.
Padme disguised.
That's right. My brain is like ready
to be done. Not catching references to episode 1 is a perfectly acceptable thing.
It's true. I don't know why I'm so distraught over not knowing the dialogue of
because
episode
it's Star
1.
Wars.
I know, but it's episode 1. It's so bad. Oh, okay.
So?
I am tired drunk. I can feel it.
You look it.
Yeah.
Ooh. All
I'm
right.
like, I'm still like 2 hours away from bedtime.
Oh my
This is
heavens, I'm so tired. Anyway, yes, follow us on Twitter because there will be announcements forthcoming on our Twitter. I've decided that's probably the best place to do it. I mean, we'll announce stuff in Facebook as well, but you may think this is too early, but really it's not if you know what you're talking about. We, Ross and I, will be attending Gen Con this year. We are going to record live out there like we did for the Salt Lake Comic-Con. If you are a fan of the show and you are also going to Gen Con, let us know by either joining the Facebook group and telling us like we keep telling you every week and nobody joins, or...
He sounds
I mean, we're super popular. And
we're adequate, okay? Or on Twitter, where we actually have a decent following and people occasionally comment. Let us know that you'll be there, though, because we would love to meet you. We already have one person who's going to do this. Hi, Josh. And I have a special surprise for you, which you won't know about yet, maybe, by the time this airs. I don't know when I'm going to talk to you about it, but sometime before Gen Con, I'm going to talk to you about it. And come on the show, for heaven's sakes. Come be a part of the show that you love or feel adequately about. But we would love to see you guys at Gen Con, and there's plenty of cool Star Wars stuff at Gen Con. So, follow us on Twitter, @MoreCivilized, and join our Facebook group, A More Civilized Podcast. Honestly, people, it is not that hard.
You all right there, Kyler? You seem
I'm getting
He's
grumpy.
tired.
I'm
He's tired.
tired.
He's tired. It's okay.
I need to, hold on.
We can
I'll feel better. Hold on. Hold on, here we go. Ross, you wouldn't let me do it earlier, but here we go.
No. I'm actually more concerned about the spray on the microphone.
Oh, okay.
we're
I'll
okay.
guard it with my hand next time. I just wanted the good popping sound, okay?
Anyway,
We can
Twitter,
find-
@MoreCivilized, Facebook's group.
Also me on Twitter, @Mr_Arsar.
Yeah. As long as we're broadcasting early, I mean, this isn't nearly as early as Gen Con, but if you are in the area of Provo, Utah, in about 3 weeks, assuming this goes up on schedule, the Life, the Universe, and Everything Symposium will be held from the 14th through the 16th of February in the downtown Marriott Hotel. I will be presenting there, speaking on gaming and folklore, apparently. And
Hey,
yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
going to be fun.
Yeah.
I've done folklore panels there before, and that was a lot of fun. So I was happy to see I got another one this year. So I would love to see you there.
And Life, the Universe, and Everything is not a small podunk shindig, you listeners.
It is small in the good way. It's small in the way of, hey, you get to rub shoulders with a lot of great people, and
Well,
there's a lot of
that's the thing is, I guess I should say it's intimate, but it's not.
Yes. Yes.
It's not small and insignificant.
Yeah.
Getting to go to this and be a panelist like Chris is going to be is not something to,
I'm more
that's not
trying to
nothing.
sell to you, the listeners, if you're at all interested in writing,
Yeah,
in
it's
game
true.
design, in movie making, any
I'm
of
just
these
trying
things.
to say Chris is way cooler than he's letting on, okay, people?
Shucks, thank you. But yeah, I'd love to see you there. And so yeah, come by 14th through 16th of February, 2019. I
Yep.
will be there.
Yep.
And if there's any topics you want us to cover that we haven't yet, please let us know. We'd love to pander to your interests.
It's true. I will pander.
Yep.
Oh, did you already do everything, Ross?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm done.
Well, in that, my brain is like 3/4 shut down. I think it's just like essential systems only right
Yeah.
now. But anyway, on that note, please, may the force be with all of you.
Always.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to a More Civilized podcast.
I'm so tired, guys.
Man,
Yeah.
you're just shutting down.
Ross,
At this
if our
point,
friendship isn't ruined by your placement of Battlefronts, I don't think our friendship will ever be ruined.
Pause. Pop your thing.
I was going to do it to derail you. I'm just
Got it.
waiting.
Good job, Ross.
I'm just waiting. I'm going to wait for you.
I will throw that down the hall.
Fine, but you have to put this in at the end.
Okay.
Ross wouldn't let me get away with derailing him with a can open, so here it is.